Very nice. It comes from Chile, I think, somewhere
Oh,
desert-like.
Well, everybody's drinking gin except for me.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm drinking Truly Salsa, black cherry.
Oh,
Truly Salsa. Is this?
Truly.
I mean, I know it's a bit dark on the camera there, Jeff.
yeah, it
However,
is.
is it okay because I have my Christmas hat on tonight? Or
Sure.
you want bright lights so you can?
No, that's fine. I don't care. I don't care.
Because I didn't put up the Christmas lights behind me like I did last year because
Mhm.
I have to go to the basement to get them, and I just don't want to go down there for reasons that you know about that we're not going to talk about.
Yeah.
So
That's fine.
I just got my Christmas Santa hat. Nice Jewish
Very,
boy.
very nice.
Nice Jewish boy. Got my Santa hat today, just in time for the show.
Your Hanukkah hat.
I tried to get the blue one, but they didn't have a Hanukkah blue hat, so I had to go with the red.
I hope you have some nasal tissue somewhere nearby.
I'm sorry.
Because you're spraying stuff all over the place, I think. Hanukkah. Okay. Jingle.
So are we going to start touting for more feedback? Because the feedback bucket seems to be fairly low right now.
No, don't tell them. We'll just have shorter shows.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I guess we can. But, I hesitate because then we're going to be in the other situation where we have so much we don't know what to do with it
It's always better to have more than too much than too little, surely. Yeah, Liz is nodding. She wants more feedback.
Okay.
I think it's good. Feedback's good.
All right. Steph is not going to be with us right away. I think she was making her way home from work, and then she had to stop and get something to eat because she had not eaten anything. So she'll join us in progress.
Poor doctors. They live such a tough life, don't they?
I know.
Who'd be a doctor?
All right. Let me see. What was I doing here? I was doing something.
3 Red Bulls.
Read. And Robert Fairbairn doubled his patron contribution. You didn't have to do that, Robert. Dick? Is he there? In the chat room? Anybody?
I'm looking for him.
I haven't seen him yet.
Okay. Hello, Brandon. He's going to catch the show. I think he sent us some audio feedback. It should be in the current show folder, right, Liz? Did somebody just take a picture of me with my thumb up like this?
Probably.
Okay. Oh, that was me. Never mind.
So here's the question.
Yes.
Cold Carl Miss. How does that name break down? Because when you get
it's Columbus, Mississippi, Carl.
Okay. Because that I thought for quite a long time that he was a young lady, an unmarried lady.
Yeah, it's not Miss like in Miss somebody. It's Mississippi.
Yeah. And I thought then perhaps he was a Colonel Carl, who was a lady, an unmarried lady who's a colonel called
I think
Carl.
he can correct. Is he in there right now? Yeah. He'll correct us if I'm wrong, but I think it stands for Columbus, Carl, Mississippi.
Okay. I was a bit reluctant, not because I wasn't.
I think it's Colonel Carl from Mississippi.
I really don't think so. But he'll let you know right now.
Yeah.
He is
Owen. Hi, Owen. Hi, Mike.
Kilo 5 Alpha Romeo November, I guess is his.
That's his radio call sign.
Yeah, what do you call that? Ham radio call sign or whatever. Okay.
What's correct? Am I correct or is Jeff correct? Colonel Carl, Mississippi.
Correct.
You promoted him to colonel. Maybe he is a colonel. I don't know. I don't think so.
Oh, he's a sergeant?
I'm a sergeant in the Swedish Army.
I don't think that's true either. Well, maybe it's true. I don't know.
Let's see the length of your hair. Before...
anything else? I don't have anything in the notes for what I was doing. What have I been doing? I've been flying. A lot. A lot.
Well, that's
6 days in
easy.
a row.
I specifically left something out of my notes about flying, so
Okay.
you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, I don't care about that.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about it.
Okay. I don't care if you do or not. It really is not. If you haven't picked up on it, it really is not a big deal to me. Maybe to
Okay.
you it is. Anyway.
Just looking out for you, Jeff. Just looking out.
Uh-huh. Whatever.
So the last show was on Saturday, wasn't it?
Yes.
There is
Saturday morning.
I haven't done much, so I'll be quick.
Yeah, and then I went out the next day. And then I've been flying every day since the last show, basically.
Me too, except for today.
Excellent. Nick.
No, that's
you
not
can
true.
Check K5ARN on QRZ.
Yeah, I could, but it's easier to ask him on the chat room.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And much easier for me because I don't even have any idea what that means.
Oh, QRZ is a sort of international database of amateur radios. And you can also pass contact details to confirm you made contact with someone.
How many days can you do in a row legally? Ian said, well,
It's more hours now than it is days.
well, or actually flight duty periods. It's kind of it's both really, but
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You can do 12, 14 days in a row. You just have to have a 30-hour break in that period.
Yeah. Was it 168
8 hours?
30 and 168 or something like that? Or
30, 168.
I don't know.
It's the most convoluted scientific baloney in the world. It just doesn't it makes no sense. And it's almost impossible unless you have a computer with an algorithm to try to figure out exactly how.
Do they actually give you an app to work it out on your EFBs?
They do not, and there is a Alpha app that doesn't work for tiddly.
Yeah, it doesn't work very well
at all.
Because that's a real gotcha. If you've got to try and do the mental maths when you're busy and you're running up towards the end of your duty time, and it just becomes a nightmare.
There are, the company is keeping track of it electronically, and the schedulers have access to all that as well. So if they try to assign a trip that you're clearly illegal for, it won't let them assign it to you.
If you're on the aircraft though and got a snag and you're running out of duty time, do they accurately calculate it, or do they try and push you to go?
What we get in our final paperwork is
last
allowable takeoff time.
And does that include your discretion?
Yeah.
That includes the 2-hour extension, which actually there was a very interesting one, not recording the show right now, but there was a very interesting email that came out today regarding how Acme is the highest user of that extension of any airline in the U.S.
Yeah, well, if they throw it into the numbers, that kind of assumes you're always going to allow yourself to
They do
use
make
it.
the assumption that you will automatically accept the 2-hour extension, but that's not, then you can come back and say, no, I'm not going to do that.
And then we're required to file we have to call in fatigued. And then we have to go ahead and fill out paperwork, which we're the only company.
That's an interesting requirement because you'd expect to be, not fatigued at the end of your duty day. But if you are required to fly an extra 2 hours and you anticipate being fatigued at the end of that 2 hours, you're not currently fatigued. Why would you fill out a fatigue form?
Well, exactly the point. And the issue is that when you are, as they say, volunteering to go ahead and accept that extension, you're now putting yourself at, for your license and, of course, safety at risk. So you may not be able to predict. Right now I could say, oh, wow, I'm wide awake. I'm ready to go. And, 30 minutes into the flight, I'm, my head's nodding down. I'm not, I'm just not able to do it. There's no way to predict it, but they require you to call in not fit for duty or fatigue.
Yeah, I'm not expecting you guys to agree with me now because I'm retired, so I can say this. I don't think they make it simple to calculate your flight duty period, specifically because they would like to be able to find workarounds at times when they really do need you to fly. And if it was a simple thing to work out and a very black and white thing, then
You're
they would
so
be more
cynical.
Yeah.
No,
because
that's probably true.
Owen is saying exactly the same thing. He says his is really complicated. I
Mhm.
know ours was really complicated, the European one, and particularly if you were flying multiple sectors like you guys do, it became a real computer job to try and work out what the hell was happening.
I like the old way of doing it. 30 and 7, period. 30
Yeah.
hours and 7 days. And you can't work into the 7th day. End of conversation. And it was 8 hours was the min reducible to rest. All they had to do was take it, instead of being min rest of 8 hours, make it 10 hours. You can't fly more than 8 hours in the day. And that was it. It was very straightforward and easy.
Yeah.
But now they come up with this, scientifical, mathematical wizardry that you have to sit there, and there's no way that you can actually calculate that out unless you're a PhD in physics, astronomical calculations, and a math wizard, and got an A in your literature class to be able to figure this stuff out. There's no way.
Yeah.
A good example of that is the word scientifical that Dan just made up.
Well, that's the other thing. The wording they often use is almost deliberately ambiguous, so that one person's interpretation may not be another. And unless you clearly define what each of these terms mean in a preamble, then people will argue black is white.
And that's the reason why right now our very own Alpa is up in arms because of what's going on with the assumption that we're going to go ahead and overextend ourselves. A 680% difference in the amount that we will extend versus every other airline in the country.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. 680% higher.
That is a lot, actually.
And what and they're using that as a function of.
Can't hear you.
I said this is fascinating.
Yeah.
I'll shut up. I'll shut up.
How do you spell subjudice? I can do the sub bit.
I can see Jeff's head.
Sub what?
No.
Subjudice.
I'll shut up.
I didn't know what that word is.
Oh, it's a legal term, I believe, for something that is supposed to be secret. Echo, what does subjudice mean?
The adverb subjudice is usually defined as before a judge or court awaiting judicial determination.
Yeah, did you hear that? Before a judge or court awaiting judicial determination.
Oh, Judice, according to Liz.
There you go. Thank you, Liz. In other words, this you're not allowed to publish any of this, anybody, because we haven't made a legal decision yet.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. The view from
damn, I'm on the wrong
cockpit
podcast.
door.
Oh, you didn't know? Yeah, this is the Airline Pilot Guy.
I thought this was Plate Talk at UK again.
Yeah, I know that's your favorite now. But
only because of the hours they keep.
Yeah, much more convenient. And works out better on your schedule for sure.
Yeah, I'm umpiring a match tomorrow.
Well, look at that, John McElree. He spelled it all out. Subjudice.
Actually, subjudice is what it says.
Subjudice.
Yes.
Subjudice. Okay. Let's see. Let me make sure I have everything where it's supposed to be.
The court. He must be a tennis player. What do you reckon? If it means before the court.
Oh, before the court.
Yeah.
That's clever. All right.
Well, now there's a good word to send to opposing bases, Masha. Obfuscation. You need to send them some feedback and use that word a lot, and then you'll also listen to see how they pronounce it.
You're just being mean.
That's me. I'm a mean man.
You're just a mean man. And Mean Willie, we're here. Right. Meanwhile, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. Oh dear.
Okay. So
They're going to get their own back.
Have we heard it all from Steph how close she is to being ready, or she's just saying just start and I'll just join you whenever?
Well, her last communication was leaving work now. This was a while back. Stop something to eat. Please don't wait on me.
She's having a multiple course meal somewhere.
Yeah, she's having a sick all you can eat sushi probably.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Well, all right. Let me get on to the proper page so I have something to read, and it's going to be Radio Roger did send in a voiceover. I just didn't have time to fix it up and put it in the music bed, so that'll be in the final product, but not in the video. So just to let you know. Did you guys look at that last item in the news? I mean, I
looked at them all.
Okay.
The one with the lovely lady captain, the Southwest 737.
Right. It's just a lot of stuff. It's kind of like a final report. It has a lot of information in it, and I'm not sure. I don't know.
I read all through, and particularly the part which had the crew actions, and there's nothing in there that I don't think you or me. I mean, there are some laudable points because she obviously wanted to get the aircraft on the ground and made, I think, some good command decisions to not use necessarily a standard approach. You know, there are some things in there you could make it a talking points, but it's an awfully long document, quite honestly.
Yeah. I just got through the stuff with the crack and the.
I see nothing in there that is really,
Yeah, so I might skip that one. Might just do the first 5. Is that okay with you, Liz? Thumbs up. Okay.
You should make a good Caesar, don't you think? Should, out there with the gladiators in the. Yeah, that's the one, Liz. We don't see many of these.
Oh, did you just see that gesture? Wow.
No, I didn't. I missed that.
No, I'm just kidding. Very much like the one in the imagery or the episode art for the last episode.
All right. Okay.
But I'm just kidding. She did.
That was my favorite artwork ever. That one.
I know a lot of people enjoyed that. Somebody asked if that was your hand, but no, it's because it said something about sausage fingers or something like that. And I said, yes, that's my hand. Those are my sausage fingers. But my hand was so close to the camera that it would just made it look huge.
I cut your thumb off on one of the views.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's true.
I had to because the end of your thumb was missing, and I couldn't have a hand with a missing half a thumb.
I still have them though.
Good man.
Okay, let's go to the intro page. We did a sound check, and I think we should roll with this thing. Oh, we need to start recording first.
Oh, yeah, good point.
I'm already recording.
Okay, recording. Thank you, Dana. And hello, Jeff Gebhardt from Chicago. Yes, I have my Christmas tie on. Maybe I should take my epaulets off and then I can get something to drink. Well, I can still get something to drink. I mean, it's okay with Acme.
In fact, they encourage their pilots to drink.
They do.
Lots of water.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I am recording, yes.
Take your epaulets off.
All right. Well, I just want drink. 3, 2, 1.
Didn't sound too bad. I'm still hoping for the 404 if we can get that in.
Yes.
404 error somehow. Because that
That's-
would make a nice simple artwork, wouldn't
Oh,
it?
I think we've already decided that's what we'll do.
Yeah, okay, good.
I think.
Hello, dogs. I'm not talking to you.
Okay. Here we go then. I'm going to hit that right there. And let's go. I'm sure I've forgotten something, I'm sure, but we're going to find out right now.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 404. Error.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hey, y'all. You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. The view from our side of the cockpit door. This is not going to be in the actual audio podcast, so I can just fool around and say whatever I want right now. I'm just like that. Broadcasting live from Studio 1A in the AVG headquarters building, Roswell.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Could you ride as flying by with the Airline Pilot Guy?
In today's episode, we're going to talk about news in aviation. Yeah. And we're going to cover your feedback.
Change.
And this week's Plane Tale, Black Christmas. So get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions, electronic devices powered on. Flight 404 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guys Show. It's an aviation podcast. And thank you to Radio Roger for doing our intros. They're awesome. And this aviation podcast attempts to cover news between episodes and also cover your wonderful feedback. And here to help me do that, from his studio in the English countryside, a professional photographer, former RAF RAAF fighter pilot, former captain for an international airline based in London, it's Captain Nick.
Yeah, hi there, Jeff. Looking forward to another show. And 404, this is an error-based podcast, I gather.
It is. It's also the original area code for the city of Atlanta, Georgia.
Well, I never.
And also here from, speaking of Atlanta, a northwest Atlanta suburb, a barbecue master, motorcycle rider, pleasure boat skipper, underwater photographer, and captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier. It's Captain Dana.
Well, good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you today? Looking forward to, well, what do I say all the time? I always say that. So let's change it up a little bit.
Yeah,
it's
change
going
it
to
up.
be another great episode of APG.
Darn right it's going to be. And soon we'll be joined by the lovely Miss or Dr. Steph. Right now she is endeavoring to make her way home from work on a Friday afternoon with lots of traffic, but she'll be joining us a little bit later. So with that, I think that we should just go ahead and move on to the news.
Stand by for news.
Alrighty then, let's start with item A in the news folder. All systems go. This is from the cbc.ca. Can you tell that our producer is from Canada? That's what she likes to read. This is an electric seaplane. Oh, and it's also in, guess where? Vancouver,
It is a nice place. Yeah.
British Columbia,
Anderson,
Canada.
There's an Anderson or two living in Vancouver.
Yeah, it's a
They're
beautiful
part of my
place.
family.
I love it. It's been a while since I've been there. I used to fly there quite often when I was flying the 727, but haven't been there in years and years. Anyway, Harbor Air has retrofitted their ADHC-2 de Havilland Beaver, and they just had the first successful test of the world's first all-electric seaplane Tuesday morning of this week in Richmond, BC.
It's a nice looking beaver.
Thank you. So I'm going to put this big pause right here. That the sound clip from the movie Airplane will be inserted there. I just can't find it right offhand. You threw me for a loop there, sir. Let's see. Maybe I can find it. That's all right. This is just the video, so who cares?
Yeah.
Where is it? Oh, I think I know where it is. It's right. Thought it was right there. Okay, I know what to do.
Well, if you can't find a beaver by now, Jeff.
Well, it's a personal problem. Let's see. Jingle search.
Especially a wet beaver.
Which that seaplane was, because it actually took off and landed in the water.
Exactly correct.
Nice beaver.
Thank you. I just had it stuffed.
There we go. Better late than never. Anyway, getting back to the news. Thank you very much. All right. Harbor Air, there in Vancouver, British Columbia, tested this airplane for the first time for a total of 3 minutes. Now, I know that, one of the obstacles to electric airplanes is the fact that the battery technology and the power density, or whatever term they use, is not yet to the point where it's going to allow for long flights, but seems to be the perfect thing for this company, because I think their average flight, I think I saw somewhere here, like 15 to 25 minutes. And this electric engine on the Beaver will give them a 30-minute flight length, or flight time length, and in addition to a 30-minute reserve. So I guess for a full hour. So it's perfect for this kind of flying, the kind of flying that Harbor Air does in Vancouver. And the pilot at the controls, I believe, is the guy that is the founder and chief executive. Yes, Greg McDougall. He took off solo in the bright yellow retrofitted de Havilland Beaver float plane. It spent 3 minutes in the air over Richmond, BC. Okay, that's right there near Vancouver, before circling back and landing in front of a crowd of roughly 120 onlookers and media. He says it was good, like a beaver on electric steroids. Smiling on the dock immediately after the flight. It was definitely smooth and a lot quieter than the piston engine, that's for sure.
It's changed the look of the aircraft quite a lot, isn't it? Because the Beaver had a radial engine, I think, did it?
I think so. I know that there are some out there that have like conversions to turboprop, but I'm not sure if this one went straight from radial to electric engine or not.
Okay. I mean, it's a 62-year-old aircraft, which is very impressive. I love the fact they whacked this new technology in it, but I think it looks pretty sleek.
It does. It's powered by NASA-approved lithium-ion batteries, also used on the International Space Station.
Oh, good.
He says it's a prototype for sure, but anyway, they're hoping to get, in the next couple of years, get the engine and all that part of it certified, and then also the airplane certified to have this conversion. And then they're going to convert their entire, I think it's 42 airplanes? I'm trying to recall exactly the number.
Yeah, it is 42 aircraft fleet.
Yeah.
Single Beavers, single Otters, and twin Otters.
Yes. So anyway, so I thought that was interesting. And hopefully battery technology will continue to improve over time, so that they can retrofit it to operations that have longer stage lengths than what Harbor Air does. But it's a start for sure.
It's great to see Canada leading the way. Sorry, Dana.
I'm just thinking about outside the box as I tend to do,
Mhm.
and electric and water.
Well, I don't
know.
I don't know if that's unless you're like holding on to one of the electric terminals inside the engine cowling
What
and
if
then
it's-
sticking your foot in the water. I don't know. I don't know what there might be some kind of a risk involved. in
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I'm just thinking, it's an airplane splashing through water.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'm thinking about. The other thing is, I'm thinking about lightning. Hopefully,
I'm guessing they've thought of this, but after all, if you've got an aircraft full of petrol and lightning, they don't mix, and neither does petrol and water. So if they can keep the batteries safe from having water ingress in the same way you kept the fuel tanks safe
Maybe.
from having water ingress, you're going to be just as safe, I would assume.
Or like, and I think that Teslas and other electric cars are driving out there in the rain. I don't know. I know it's not quite the same thing.
No, I'm just, again, I like to think
I
outside the box a little bit.
suspect they've thought of this though.
I'm hoping.
They probably have. I hope they're watching our show.
Yeah,
because they're going to go, oh, shit,
damn!
look at that.
That Captain Colton, he's as sharp as a
recruit
tack.
him immediately and get him onto our company, and he can play with our beavers.
Oh boy,
Wet beavers at that.
Okay, just wanted to mention the company that makes the engine. Now I'm not sure it's Magna X or Magnix. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. It's all lowercase MAGNI and then a big X. So
I would hope it'd be Magnix.
That sounds reasonable to me, but who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, moving on to some sad news. And I think there are some updates to this, although we don't have them in our news article here. I'm pretty sure when this got into our news segment, they still had not found the Chilean military plane, a C-130, that was flying from Chile to what's it called, the base that they were flying to.
Was it McMurdo or no?
No, it's a Chilean owned base, and it should say
King George's Island in the Antarctica.
That's it, King George's Island. Thank you. They had well, here, let me read this. Probably the best thing to do. Chilean military plane with 38 people on board has crashed on its way to Antarctica, Chile's Air Force said Tuesday. Air Force officials said that they had not been able to locate the Hercules C-130 transport, but based on the number of hours it has been missing, they've determined it likely crashed. A search and rescue mission is ongoing. And I just saw something on the ride. By the way, I just got in the door from a 4-day trip, and in the train on the way home, I was reading through some news sources that showed some progress, some updates on this crash, and they have found some of the wreckage, and they have found some bodies.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the BBC saying there were no survivors, said the head of their Air Force.
Yeah,
and they found wreckage and identified it as the aircraft from the markings on the wreckage, and they've also found human remains, very sadly.
Yeah, and right at this point, I don't think they have any idea what happened, what brought it down. It had 38. Let's see, 38 total people on board. Let's see, both crew members. I think it was like 17 crew members and 20 something passengers heading down to the base, and they made it about halfway between Chile and the Antarctic base, and when it went missing. So again, I'd just like to point out that again, initially, when nothing was known as to what possibly brought it down, Juan Brown, Blanca Lirio, his YouTube channel, he does a nice job of kind of going over the mission of the airplane and what they do at the base, and because Juan also flew the C-130, and so he had a lot of information about it. So again, I recommend checking out his channel called Blanca Lirio. I'll put a link in the show notes. Very sad, and hopefully we'll find out what happened. It just kind of seems to have just fallen out of the sky and crashed into the water.
Yeah.
What's happened to Dana?
Well, I think he's gone for a walk.
Yeah, maybe he just got tired of us.
Already? It didn't take long.
Very quick. Looks like it says device is not connected, so he must be having some kind of equipment issues again. Might have to restart the whole thing. Anyway, not the show. His. Yeah, he said the darn thing stopped. That's not the exact wording he was using. Internal.
No, he was using Acme Airlines phraseology.
Yes. But I had to censor it a bit. He said he reset his computer before the show, too. That's weird. Okay, well. Good luck, Dana. Come on back when you can. Let's move to item C. And this is from the Aviation Herald. Accident. Ethiopian DH-8D de Havilland -8-400. And a lot of times we just call that the 400, right? The dash 400. Ethiopian Airlines -8-400 was performing flight Echo Tango 212 from Dawa. Hey, there's Dana.
Diadawa?
I don't know. Dawa?
I would say it's Diadawa.
Okay. To Addis Ababa.
Addis Ababa. Yep. Been there.
With 74, I have not. 74 passengers and 6 crew, was accelerating for takeoff from Dawa's runway 33 in night conditions when a number of, at least 5, hippopotamuses, would that be hippopotami?
Well, I think it might be hippopotami. I think hippopotamuses is probably correct, but I'm going to check it out now and see.
Okay, do that. Well, I continue to read this from the Aviation Herald. At least 5 hippopotamuses crossed the runway. The crew rejected takeoff, lost directional control. The aircraft went off the runway and came to a stop on soft ground. There were no injuries, and the aircraft received substantial damage beyond repair. And I believe this actually happened back in 2016.
Oh, wow. By the way, either is correct. The plural is hippopotamuses, but hippopotami can also be used.
Okay. So they hit a hippopotamus. Hit a hippopotami. Is that a show title? No,
I think you'd hit you'd hit hippopotami, or you'd hit a hippopotamus.
If Harry hit a hippopotami, how many hippopotami did Harry hit? Okay. We're getting silly. Sorry. The Aviation Herald learned of this occurrence on December 10th, 2019. And while discussing hull losses of Ethiopian Airlines with Captain Bernd Kai von Hoslen, what's TRI? What's that stand for?
It's usually a training instructor.
Okay, training instructor, B737, retired, former 737-800 MB-38M captain for Ethiopian Airlines, having left the company in April of this year, who specifically asked to be identified as a source. Following
that's an odd thing to do, to be specifically asked.
Mm-hmm.
Does he want to have a get at the airline or something?
Might have something to do with it. I don't know. There might be some politics or something involved here. Anyway, Captain Hoslen told the Aviation Herald that just this summer, 2019, the aircraft Echo Tango Alpha November Yankee had been dismantled. Both engines had been damaged beyond repair, in addition to substantial fuselage damage, which prompted the airframe to be written off. The airframe was told to be parted out. Following the accident, all night flights into or out of unfenced airports were halted. The airline at the time had released a press release stating the crew faced a runway incursion by wild animals during their takeoff roll and aborted takeoff.
Yeah, they were really angry. By the way, TRI is a type rating instructor.
Oh, okay. Good to know. And I was also going to say, maybe was this the captain, the Ethiopian Airlines captain, that was critical of the training of Ethiopian Airlines during the aftermath, the investigation of the Ethiopian 737 MAX crash? I think that is the same guy. Maybe that's why he wanted to be specifically mentioned. Yeah. So interesting that this happened, and it seems like hardly anybody knew anything about it until just recently. But anyway,
Yeah, it's a hazard of the jungle, the bush. Being a bush pilot, you wouldn't have thought 737 guys were bush pilots, but or even Dash 8s bush pilots. But yeah, if you're going to have a runway without any surrounds, you're going to get the odd animal walking on. But a hippo is a sizable piece of kit. Good lord!
Yeah, actually, the Dash 8 is quite a capable airplane to be able to fly in the bush like that. And
That's great.
But to hit hippopotami?
well, to hit the hippopotami, that's a whole different story because it's not fenced in.
Couldn't it hippopotami?
Hippopotamus. Anyways, to get our 50% up, you are right, Jeff. By the way, he was.
Oh wait, hang on. Let me stop that. We'll get her in a minute. What was I right about?
That was about he was the captain, was critical of the 737 Max.
That's making sense now.
It is now. So there you go.
There we go. Hey, look who's here from her lakeside home in the Carolinas. Doctor, skydiver, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument rated pilot. It's Dr. Steph.
Hey guys, glad I could finally join y'all. Oh, virtual hug from Data there.
That's
Love it.
sweet.
So I feel like I should also have something on my head here. Jeff and I are sans Santa Claus.
I have headphones, so that's kind of something in my head.
This is
But
all
I don't have a Santa Claus hat. Oh, look,
Very nice.
a tiara.
Yeah, but
yes.
Ta-da!
There
if
she is, Miss
And that's-
America. Okay, go ahead.
absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
Absolutely gorgeous. No, I mean, I always have to have something on my head because I'm bald. I'm like the three of you.
This
Yeah,
is
you
made
get
for
cold.
like
Always have
a
something in
child
here.
or something, though. It really is quite small. So
So
I'll put this back.
I noticed
here.
you had that handy there. Do you wear that often while you're at home?
I just like to look at it.
Okay.
Just keep it nearby.
Remember the pageant.
That's right.
Prom queen moment.
Smile, smile, kiss, kiss, swipe a tear.
Do you have a
Or
sash
try
too
that
somewhere nearby?
What? Oh, a sash?
Sash. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. It's just over there.
Okay.
You can, dear listener, you can see it. Just imagine it in the
Yeah.
corner
Just
of
think about
whatever.
it. Over that way.
What's that
Or
thing
that.
that you wear when you're getting married?
Mm,
A veil?
A veil.
Underwear?
Yeah. Do you have that nearby?
I was going to say stockings.
Wow. This is a aviation podcast.
Yes,
Is it not?
it-
Hi, welcome.
shoot. HR's back.
I know.
Damn.
Now we got to be.
And we'll have to stop
Party
talking
poop. I need
about the
another drink
beavers
already.
now as well.
HR shows up. I need another drink.
Yes.
Okay. So we were just talking about the hippopotami being hit by the
Yeah.
airplane, and
That'll
it was-
ruin your day.
yeah, and it was kind of interesting that the guy that said, "Please use me as a source," was the guy that, as Dana has just confirmed, is the guy that was highly critical of the training of the Ethiopian pilots in the aftermath of the 737 MAX crash
Gotcha.
they had there. Anyway,
Does
so
it say that they actually hit them, or did they just lose control of the airplane avoiding them?
I think they ended up hitting them because somewhere I read that there was one or two hippopotami killed at some point. I
right.
think.
Okay.
I don't see it now, but I do remember reading it somewhere.
3 hippos were killed as a result of the accident,
Oh,
as
right.
reported by a local newspaper.
There you go.
Okay.
Why can't I see that?
Well,
Look
my
at the
mate
very
killed
bottom.
2 kangaroos with an F-18, so I think 3 hippos is a pretty good score.
Yeah, that's I think they're more substantial animals
they
than
are.
the
They don't
kangaroos.
jump quite as high, though.
No, maybe. I don't know. Have you ever seen a hippopotamus jump?
They only jump at
pretty good
night.
All right.
I
I've
bet
never seen an elephant fly, but they made a movie about him.
This
that
is
may
true.
have Dumbo. Was going to say, oh yeah, I bet you the locals are really happy though. Free meat. That's right.
yeah. Yes.
According to Colonel Carl, Miss Colonel Carl, that hippo beef is great.
Oh,
Mm.
excellent.
So would it be actually beef? Think
No,
so.
it's
Anyway,
Well, are they called sea cows? In which case, they would definitely be beef.
wait, no.
That's something different.
Sea
Or is
cows
that a
are.
manatee?
I mean, hippos are, they
manatee,
do
yeah.
swim, right?
Yes, they do.
Yep.
Or they just walk along the bottom. One
They
of
walk
the
along
other.
the bottom with their snout out in the water.
It looks like swimming, kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
This show has gone so far off the rails already. And it just started.
Well, Christmas is coming. We're all excited.
Yes, that's true. Okay.
Speak for yourself, sir.
Yes, yes.
Says the one with the flashing Santa hat.
Yeah.
Well,
Laura
someone was
Dave-
angry at us on Facebook. I see there's a
Uh-oh,
Facebook
really?
reactions up at the top of the page now.
Oh.
Yeah.
So how do you tell that?
Do you guys don't see that? Just me?
What are you talking about? Oh, I see. Oh, yeah, 19. Facebook. What?
What do you
It's
say?
actually my friend that's angry.
Where do you
Teresa.
say
You
that?
can, you can talk to her.
Yeah, well, we're going out for dinner tonight, so I will
Oh.
talk to her.
Maybe that's why she's angry. You're here instead of at dinner with her.
Well, we're going out at 8 o'clock, so we got plenty of time. I don't know
All
what to say.
Where do y'all see that?
Top
Right
left
next to
corner of the
live, where it
screen.
says live, and then I with 31.
There's 31 people watching on.
Oh, over there. Okay. I see
They
it now.
get likes, then one laughing, which is the Airline pilot guy.
Oh.
Was laughing at yourself, and then Teresa's
And then-
mad.
Dana's friend is angry with us. Apparently, we've said something to.
So
Apparently so.
what's her name?
She's probably
Teresa? Teresa, we understand why you're upset with Dana. We
Teresa
get the
Byam.
same way.
I hope she's not mad because she has to cancel for some reason tonight. Then I'll be mad.
There, Columbus, Carl in Mississippi.
If you
Ding,
have
ding,
to
ding.
explain it, Carl, it's too complicated.
But we knew that. He's explained it to us before.
I know.
Yeah,
I
but
was
I'm
trying
trying
to get to that. but- Okay, let's move on, shall we?
Yeah, what's next?
Item D.
Excellent.
This is from somewhere. Oh, Aviation Herald again. Thomas Cook, Airbus A330-200 registration, Golf Mike Lima, Juliet Lima, performing flight 2915 from Varadero, Cuba, to Manchester, England, with 320 passengers and 11 crew, was en route at flight level 370 over the Atlantic Ocean, about 150 nautical miles northeast of Grand Bahamas Airport, when the aircraft entered a denser area of cloud, a very dark cloud.
As opposed to the previously regularly dense cloud that they were in.
Read between the lines. Probably a really nasty looking dark cloud.
Yeah.
With increasing turbulence, the captain instructed the cabin crew to immediately take their seats over the PA. And about 5 seconds later, the aircraft encountered severe turbulence, causing an altitude deviation of up to 500 feet. Yikes. The autopilot disconnected. The sounds of hail impact occurred at the same time. Ooh, hail, that's not good.
Not that
when you hear
high.
the hail.
Not at 370. You don't want
No. About 90 seconds after the onset, the severe turbulence ceased. However, light to moderate turbulence was observed throughout the next hour of flight. Immediately after the PA, a flight attendant in the aft galley who was unable to immediately stow her galley cart applied the brake on the cart and attempted to wedge it into a safe place. However, her foot and ankle became trapped underneath the galley cart. When the turbulence sufficiently subsided, other crew members came to assist and free her foot. In consultation with MedLink, it was determined the ankle was fractured, and it was decided to continue the flight to Manchester because, after all, it was just a flight attendant. Later, Later, it turned out another flight attendant had received a minor back injury, not apparent during the flight. The aircraft landed safely in Manchester about 7 hours and 20 minutes later. One cabin crew received serious, another cabin crew minor injuries. The aircraft received minor damage to the radome during the turbulence encounter. Let's see. The UK Air Accidents Investigation Branch released a brief bulletin concluding the probable cause of the accident was an unexpected turbulence encounter while avoiding areas of known CB cumulonimbus activity. It is likely that the number of injuries would have been greater had passengers been moving around the cabin at the time. So let's see. The AAIB reported that the captain had observed a number of thunderstorm clouds during departure from Cuba, which did not paint on their weather radar number 1. The crew switched to weather radar 2, which seemed to solve the problem. At the time of the turbulence encounter, they were in cloud at flight level 370. The crew was maneuvering to avoid weather returns on their radar. The captain had eliminated the fasten seatbelt sign about 5 minutes prior to the turbulence encounter. While being clear of all weather returns by at least 30 nautical miles, the aircraft entered a denser area of cloud. The turbulence increased, prompting the captain to make a PA, instructing cabin crew to immediately take their seats. 5 seconds later, severe turbulence occurred, lasting for 90 seconds. So there's also a picture included of a satellite imagery of the storm system that they were kind of trying to make their way through or around.
Doesn't look very nice, does it?
No, it looks pretty scary to me, actually.
Ugly. Mind you, there's no real way around it that you can see. I mean, so I
Mhm.
suspect they were just trying to pick their way through. Those 200s now, I don't know if they were the same fit out as our 200s, but the 200s we got from Air Berlin did not have very good radars. They were the really early models, and same as our initial Airbuses, we got the 340 300s. By the time I left the company, our 330s had a really nice interleaved flat scanner that would sweep multiple layers, and it would also interleave between the two different range scales selected between both sides. It was very sophisticated. It could work out where the terrain was, and it would automatically paint into the right angle. And it really did display well. It was exceedingly good. But those earlier ones, you had to work at them all the time if you wanted to get the best out of them. You couldn't just set them and leave them and wait to see if something appeared on them.
That sounds like something that Dana and I are familiar with.
Yeah, it's hard work, isn't it, if you're in bad weather, because you've really got to be at that scanner all the time, just checking to see that you're painting the right areas and that something isn't being obscured. Whereas the later versions really do it all themselves and are really very good at it.
Yeah, we're always having to change our
it's kind of an art
our
that
view.
you learn with experience, and
playing with the gain all the time, just trying to make sure you're not swamping out other weather spots that you want to avoid.
I'm just wondering that if they had X-ray equipment on the aircraft to determine that the ankle was indeed fractured of the flight attendant.
And I think they just wobbled it around until she screamed.
I was thinking, if you're going to be on that airplane for that amount of time, I hope they had some really good drugs in that medical kit, EMK.
Well, there's alcohol available. Yeah.
Oh, they have those inflatable splints and things.
Yeah.
And alcohol, that would work a treat, wouldn't it?
But Steph's point is well taken. There's not really a way to know whether or not.
I mean, there's some obvious ones. If it was an open compound, things at wrong angles.
Like
That's very obvious. Those are very obvious. But it can be hard to determine between a bad ankle sprain and a fracture sometimes as well. But maybe it was very obvious. So.
Well, maybe it blew up like a balloon.
Yeah, even bad sprains could do that. But yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I was just being
poor circulation.
Yeah. Well, either way, not a fun remaining 7 hours back to Manchester after that. Yeah, that's
a long time to go.
Bad for.
Yeah. Wondering if well, I'm not going to speculate. Okay, well, and when I was reading through this, I'm reminded of the fact that we aviators know that when you're traveling, especially downwind of these very big storm systems, that for every knot of wind, the turbulence related to that storm, and sometimes even the hail from it, can extend 1 nautical mile for every knot of wind. So if the winds at the time are 70 knots, let's say, 70 knots downwind from that cell, you could still suffer some effects of it. So not sure about the hail thing, if it can go that far, but it's amazing how sometimes hail can get out there way far away from the cell itself. Yeah.
Yep. If you're going to pick a side, pick the upwind side.
Upwind's the way to go if you can.
Yes.
You're right.
We love wind.
Upwind is good. Yeah. Okay. Especially if, well, never mind. E, I was thinking of Captain Al.
Yes, I could gather that.
We love it too.
We're just kidding. We're just making all that up. He's fine. I mean, E, accident. Avianca Boeing 787-800 near Barcelona on November 3rd, 2019. An overspeed correction causes injuries. They were flying November 796 Alpha Victor, a 787-8, flight 18 from Bogota, Colombia to Barcelona. Was descending through flight level 260 towards Barcelona when the indicated airspeed increased, reaching a value close to the maximum operating speed. In order to reduce the speed, the crew deployed the speed brakes and pulled the control column, causing a vertical acceleration of about 2.1 G. That's a lot in a...
Feel that in your seat there.
Yeah, everyone sat down in a hurry.
And I
feel like I
guarantee
suddenly weigh twice as much as I did before. Oh, wait.
all of us that fly airliners know, have had the experience, either us doing it ourselves or somebody else doing it, like deploying speed brakes like too quickly, or perhaps disconnecting an autopilot and putting a manual input and maybe overdoing it a bit. Not 2.1 G's worth, but it's you have to be very careful when you attempt this kind of maneuver to keep the speed from exceeding the maximum operating speed. Wouldn't you agree, guys?
Maximum speed or maximum
well,
or just increasing the
well, I'm saying
vertical
that
acceleration
in order to keep it from exceeding the maximum operating speed, and you're doing something to keep it from happening, you have to be careful the way you deploy speed brakes and activate the control yoke, especially if you're taking over from auto flight.
When you're at high speed, they're very sensitive.
Yes.
Yeah, so don't mess about with them much. Mind you, getting to 2.1 G is quite impressive. So it sounds like you planted the yoke into his tummy.
It sounds like maybe they kind of didn't notice it until like the very last minute and went, oh, and just overreacted.
Yeah, a bit of a startle.
That's exactly what I was about to say. It sounds like an way overreaction.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't realize. Go ahead, Dana.
I was going to say, probably getting really close to the, obviously maximum operating speed. So there's way much, the barber pole, as it says, maximum operating speed. We know it as the barber pole. So that can kind of get the pucker factor up a little bit, and you can overreact very easily.
Or in a vertical tape digital display, Nick, it would be some kind of a colored bar or something that would alert you to the fact that you're getting close to the maximum speed.
That's exactly right. Big red bar.
Okay.
But the Airbuses will, of course, protect themselves. And they will do it in a gentlemanly manner, as opposed to whacking the 2.1 G's on.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
But the plate's got protection built in, hasn't it? It's got, and I don't know how much and what it does protect, but it does have elements of self-protection to stop you from overspeeding and doing similar things, doesn't it?
I think so. It would. Seems to me it would.
I imagine the 787 being a really new generation airplane would have protection.
Yeah.
Don't get it.
No, don't either. Anyway, they reported a flight attendant and a passenger received serious injuries when the aircraft encountered the plus 2.1 G as a result of the crew pulling back on the control column and deploying the speed brakes. So an investigation has been opened. So we'll keep our eyes and ears open for the investigation results. And I guess we decided we weren't going to do item F, right? Or do you want to go ahead and do it anyway?
No, I think it's too long. Maybe just a quick summary of what caused it.
Okay. What we're referring to here is item F, an update on the Southwest Boeing 737 accident that occurred near Philadelphia last year, April 17th, 2018, an uncontained engine failure. Although some people have been telling me that, technically speaking, now maybe our engine experts in the chat room can let us know, but I believe that technically it was not an uncontained failure because the part of the engine that is supposed to contain things actually was effective, but somehow the fan blade got outside of that protected region and almost went in front of the engine and out, or something like that. So I don't know. I'm not an expert in this, but anyway, we'll just use the uncontained term here. You'll recall that the 737 was flying along. Let's see. Does it talk about exactly where they were? I don't know what altitude they were going through. Maybe that's later down in the article. But anyway, there was a big explosion. There was a crack in the dovetail of the fan blade number 13, which resulted in the fan blade separating in flight and impacting the engine fan case at a location that was critical to the structural integrity and performance of the fan cowl structure. This impact led to the in-flight separation of fan cowl components, including the inboard fan cowl aft latch keeper, which struck the fuselage near a cabin window and caused the window to depart from the airplane, the cabin to rapidly depressurize, and the passenger fatality. So it actually wasn't a fan blade that hit the window that caused the depressurization. It was actually a component of the cowl itself. So anyway, it goes into a lot of detail here, analysis of the fan blade and other fan blades in the engine, and the fact that they weren't supposed to see these kind of cracks in these fan blades with such low cycles. And in this case, the cycles were around 32,636 since new, and they found several other. And of course, we know that before this occurred, there was that another Southwest flight off of the Gulf Coast near Pensacola that almost had an identical situation or occurrence, and but they didn't have anything hit the airplane and take out a window, and there was no injury in that case. But the same kind of cycles on the fan blades and the crack and everything else. So apparently they're still trying to figure out what led to the cracking, and the article goes into a lot of detail regarding that. So maybe my co-hosts can now kind of jump in here and relate any other information this article highlights. Or maybe they may not.
Well, I mean, what my suggestion was just a summary, and just you did a good job with it.
Well, I'm trying to just summarize the thing that I actually looked at was, the cause of why did this thing happen and why did it crack and that kind of thing. But I didn't actually get as far as reading the
I
cruise
took
actions.
a good read through the crew actions.
Okay.
Jeff.
So what would your summary be?
My summary would be that they took quite a while to action the engine problem initially, but then again, they were also dealing with a depressurization at the time. So there was a certain amount of priority required over which drill they were going to do first. And I think we both agree that you need to get your probably descent going, and then when you got a spare moment, you're going to start tackling other things that are perhaps less important in your mind. It depends how you prioritize this. But there was comments made that on the order of which the checklists were done, none of which really were critical. They just said that this checklist wasn't quite completed. There are a few actions left out of this checklist, that sort of thing. But they did continually say that the omissions had no bearing on the outcome. So, and they also repeated that, of course, it's the captain's right to abbreviate, alter, adjust checklists as they see fit in an emergency situation. Not every situation is a textbook, I'm sitting in the sim, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. So, my wife's come home. We're going to get some noise now. Okay. So basically, they came out and said no, they were completely happy with everything that was done, despite the anomalies they centered on.
And I don't know if any of you had the chance to at Oshkosh this year go and listen to the crew talk about their experience, because they were there. And kind of they go through the same thing where they talk about the initial kind of shock of things and how that kind of it takes you a minute to recover from that startle factor and then go, okay, what needs to be done first, second, third, and you're kind of going through things and trying to make sure you hit all those things. But at the same time, you have to, you're getting information potentially from the cabin. You're trying to figure out where you're going to go to land. You're trying to just fly the airplane, which is first and foremost. So,
Yeah, the
It's
startle
interesting to hear.
factor and sensory overload, and try to sort it.
And
all
they said
out.
that it was quite a handful to manage the plane initially after this, like right in the first few moments with the uncontained engine failure. So
Very
that
interesting.
just handling the plane was difficult.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that. Didn't have a chance.
It was
to
a
see
good
that.
talk. I'm glad I went to it.
Okay. Well, if any of you want to go into further detail regarding that report, it will be in the show notes. And
It's worth a read, actually. It's a good analysis, even though it is rather dry.
maybe we should rewrite it and make it like really sensational.
Yeah, that would be very good idea.
You know, this is the stuff they should publish, right? Like for the
Yeah.
general public to read. Everyone will just go, oh, okay, so really everything was fine and it worked out the way it was supposed to, and they were trained to take care of this problem. And
We should use like a reenactment if we had a little extra time in production equipment.
The only problem
would
with
be fun.
these is that they list every slight anomaly. And there's not a lot that a member of the public can do to separate between a very small change in procedures or a checklist item that might have been skipped over because it wasn't important, and a big item.
Yeah, that's
it
quite
all
right, Nick.
given the same emphasis on one of these reports. So it's quite obvious that the public could look at that and go, oh my God, she missed 2 items from this checklist. So, you go to yourself, well, no, actually, in the big scheme of things, it was much more important to get the aircraft on the ground and get this poor woman who had been so badly injured treated, because she didn't know exactly what the situation was with her.
Right.
That it was perhaps to tick a few extra boxes, which you might have done in the sim, but not in real life.
Can I point out one thing?
Yes.
And that is that when we are in training in the simulators, we do have a rapid decompression scenario that we would deal with. And, being the startle factor, and the first thing that you're really feeling in the first sensory you're probably going to have is that loss of, the loss of pressurization. I don't know how, whether it took the wind out of their chest or not, but, certainly I'm sure they put the oxygen mask on relatively quickly. But the reality is the way that we're trained is that we're to analyze and try to deal with that immediately, and either, look at it, whether it's a structural failure of the aircraft or whether it's not a structural failure of the aircraft, and immediately start descending the aircraft and get it, onto profile to get it coming down so that, we can get oxygen back into the cabin, because the real design of those oxygen masks in the back of the aircraft are really not to sustain life. It's to sustain life, but it's really not to breathe off of. In other words,
For a short period of time.
Yeah, it's a very short period of time. It's really just designed to allow the aircraft to descend from a high altitude that there is no oxygen down to a breathable, atmosphere. So, that's really what our focus is on training. So now we're taking a single event and making it a multiple event with what they dealt with. So the startle factor is definitely an issue there. And initially, I'm sure the aircraft, as I mentioned, was very hard to control. So you get 2 pretty massive things going on at the same time. And, maybe the little bit of delay in handling the engine failure is really because the way we're trained is, all right, analyze the rapid decompression and let's get that under control. Let's fly the aircraft, as Dr. Steph mentioned, and let's get this into a breathable situation. Then we can fully analyze what we're really dealing with here. And I think that's exactly what they did.
That has to be the priority,
Yes.
just to keep consciousness and do whatever you can to do that. And then, okay, now what else what happened here? And take measures to try to fix the situation if possible. All right. Well, you know what that means? Getting to know you, getting to know all about you. And since the last episode, we've been busy doing stuff, I think. And let's see, maybe not. Maybe. I know Dana and I have been busy doing stuff. Steph, what have you been up to?
I've been busy.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. hold on, I'm just rearranging stuff here. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's see where to start. When did we do this last show?
Saturday morning.
Okay. So
Well, that's right, you have
uneventful.
been doing a lot of things.
Yeah, I know. I had to remember where I needed to start off from. Uneventful weekend. Not a whole lot going on. It's been busy at work as is usual this time of year. So just trying to keep my head above water there, treading water a little bit. Sometimes it feels like, but still had enough time to arrange some things outside of work. So on Wednesday this past week, I had the opportunity to meet up with Colonel Jeff, the good-looking Captain Jeff, for breakfast. Sorry, Jeff.
Go ahead.
Something we were planning on for a little while. I've actually, I was talking to him. He's got retirement coming up soon as well. He's definitely started the countdown. So I've had a chance to fly with Jeff. I wanted to fly on one of Nick's flights, but he snuck out of that before I was able to. So, I know. But I told Jeff, I was like, it'd be fun to fly on one of your flights as a passenger before you retire. Colonel Jeff, that is. So he was looking because he comes through the Charlotte area quite frequently, but we weren't able to make schedules line up this month. But he said, hey, this Wednesday morning, I have like a 3-hour layover. Would you have time for breakfast? It's pretty early. I said, well, it is early and I'd have time for a short breakfast because unfortunately I do have to go to work. So we kind of arranged that. And so Wednesday morning, I got up super early. The technical details of how I was able to meet him at the airport, I had to be there at 5 a.m. or so. So even before his flight, he was flying from Raleigh
you were
to...
keen.
I know, right?
He's not that handsome.
Yeah, but he was paying for breakfast.
Oh, okay.
So,
Fair.
so I was there at 5 o'clock in the morning, which was super early. It was before his flight even left Raleigh-Durham, his very long flight from Raleigh-Durham to Charlotte, North Carolina, the Tar Heel tour there. Yeah.
Wow.
I know. I was like, you have that flight? That seems strange, but whatever. So I had about over an hour to kill in the airport very early in the morning. So got my Starbucks and I was just going to walk laps around the different concourses and terminals, just get a little bit of exercise in, keep myself awake, and start looking through Twitter. And I see a tweet from this guy, Miami Rick. You might have heard of him. Yeah.
We love Miami Rick.
I know. And the tweet was
Ricketts.
posted. The Ricketts are back. It was posted at like 1:30 in the morning local time. And it was about something a flight attendant of a flight that he was on had said as they were boarding the plane with a destination of Charlotte. And I was like, oh, really? Interesting. A red-eye flight from the West Coast arriving in Charlotte. So I did some perusing of the interwebs and Flight Radar 24 and some sleuthing, some stalking. And there was one flight that fit the criteria that he might have been on. So looked a little bit closer. And oh, how convenient. It is arriving at the gate adjacent to the one where Colonel Jeff is supposed to be arriving.
Wow.
I know. So I was like, well, let's see what happens here. And within like, a 20-minute time frame or something. So I walk over and I sit myself down there and the plane arrives and it's deplaning. And lo and behold, off walks Miami Rick. So I had the pleasure of surprising him a little bit.
Yeah, I bet that was a surprise for him.
Yeah,
That was
it
brilliant.
really was. Yeah.
Well done.
The look on his face was pretty great. And he goes, what are you doing? Where are you going? I was like, well, I'm actually not going anywhere. I'm just here to have breakfast with Colonel Jeff, who, oh, by the way, is on base to final right now and will be pulling into this gate in about 10 minutes if you've got time to join us for breakfast. And he said, well, yeah, actually, I do have time on my layover here. So we kind of sat down, caught up a little bit, and about 15 minutes later, Colonel Jeff walks off the plane, takes a look at the two of us, and makes kind of the same face of surprise that Rick had when he saw me sitting there. And yeah, that was really nice. It was a nice, pleasant surprise for everyone all around. So definitely worth getting up early in the morning. And we had about 40 minutes to catch up over breakfast and just chat for a bit.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'll use that wonderful selfie, the picture of you guys together.
It's fine
in
with
the
me.
show
I'll
notes.
check with everyone else
Yeah.
involved in the picture, but I'll let you
Okay.
know. Yeah, but that should be fine. I don't think it's an issue. Yeah.
All right.
So
Excellent.
yeah, my thanks to Rick for posting something about his whereabouts. And
And that was Wednesday. So
that was Wednesday.
that was probably the last time that you were at the airport.
No,
No?
actually not.
Yeah. So
And not because I was doing any flying myself around. No, I, tis the time of year to take a look at how things are going status-wise for the airline that I fly on most frequently, and I was within less than 2,000 miles of the next level up, so I took a little mileage run flight to Baltimore, Washington, and back yesterday, just after work.
Excellent. How was that?
Uneventful.
Good.
Yep. Sat there in seat 1A. Actually, I got into seat 1A on the flight up there, and there was a couple that boarded very late, but had flight seats not together. So I did the nice thing and switched to 3C next to the nice lady with the very small dog under the seat, who was very pleasant. And on the way back in 1A. But yeah.
Excellent.
So.
Very cool. Anything else? I'm sure there must be more.
There's more. It's upcoming stuff though. I'll be back at the airport tomorrow because it never ends. Dispatcher Mike and I are going to see if we can remember how to handle Midwestern winters over the weekend on Sunday. It's not going to be pretty.
So what are you going to go out like snow skiing or
no, we're going to attend a
ice skating
professional American football game
in
the lovely town of Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Now tell the people that aren't familiar with gridiron football, American National Football League, and the Green Bay Packers, and they have a place, probably one of the northernmost locations.
Yeah, I don't know how they compare with like Buffalo or trying to think who else.
That's right. Buffalo's is outside too.
Yeah,
right?
they're outside. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Green Bay's further north.
Green Bay is further north. Okay, I'd have to look at
That's what I was thinking too.
It is.
Really?
And
okay. It is. Not by a ton, but by a little bit.
But it's open. It's not like one of those domes where it's
not
72
a dome.
degrees.
It's not a dome. It is not climate controlled. It is outdoors, and right now the forecast is calling for 18 degrees Fahrenheit, but sunshine. They took the snow out of the forecast.
Oh.
A little, well, like 10-mile-an-hour winds.
So what would that be? That would be
in Celsius. It's minus I don't know, 4, like 5.
Yeah, it's got to be a -5 or below.
Someone do the math for us.
So,
like minus 8.
Probably about
minus 10.
Yeah, maybe not minus 10. That would be Celsius. Close, I think. Yeah, that's cold.
Yeah.
Any wind?
About 10 miles an hour.
Oh, it's going to be very comfortable there.
It's going to be very nice and brisk. I'm sure we'll see some diehard fans, just no coat at all, chest painted for, Green Bay colors.
Yeah, like Mike. And he going to do that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I said I'm coming in my full ski and snow gear.
Well, that should be fun. I can't wait to hear about that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it.
Good.
So, and I'm not cheering for the Packers. I'll be cheering for the Bears.
Oh, the Bears. That's right.
The Bears. And but we're both excited to go to a game at Lambeau Field. It's kind of one of those. It's an older stadium and an experience in and of itself. So
that's what I've heard. That's what I hear. Very cool. Well, that sounds like fun.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about that. It may be the most northern outdoor stadium that's exposed to really cold weather in the United States.
I think it is.
I think it is. I mean, New England.
It was New England. Yeah, that was the other.
Is further south.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Wisconsin's right next to Minnesota, which International Falls is known as the coldest spot on the lower 48, which is the next state over. So I would imagine that's probably the coldest, next to Chicago.
The Vikings, they have a dome now.
Yeah, Vikings is dome.
Yeah.
Although Washington is further north, Washington State, where the Seahawks play.
Oh, okay.
But that is actually a temperate area because of the Pacific Ocean. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that there's a more northern outdoor stadium in the U.S.
Excellent.
Well, isn't that fascinating?
Seattle.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, Seattle's, but outdoor that's exposed those type of conditions.
It's outdoor. It's just not exposed to the same.
Yeah, right.
It's that's what. Yeah, harsh
Seattle,
weather conditions.
Harsh weather conditions.
Well, anyway, that sounds like fun. In quotation marks. Nick, sir, how have you been? Are you still awake?
Only just.
Okay.
We've just endured 6 weeks of political campaigning and had an election. You guys do it for about 2 years. How do you live through that?
I don't
just
listen
ignore
to
it.
politics on the news.
Anyway, so that's just happened. That's of great interest to people who are keen on leaving the European Union. Personally, I had a very nice photographic task to do, photographing a ascending dog trial, which was in a big stadium. Talking of stadiums, that was good. I had a lot of pictures to process, and I'm still working on them because when I came back, I had to produce a plane tail. I had to do something else. Oh golly, I've just been so busy. Anyway, I still got those pictures to finish off, but they'll be done shortly. And organize the paperwork for the new motor, which is actually coming next week. I was hoping it would be here this week, but it's actually arriving next week, so I'll be picking it up on Tuesday. But that's really it for me.
You'll have something to talk about on the next show.
Not aviation related again, but who cares?
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah, early start tomorrow off umpiring a bowls match.
Oh, very good. Oh, really? This time of year? I didn't know you
indoors.
Oh, okay.
Climate controlled stadiums, apparently.
Exactly right.
And the bowling dome.
Yes.
All right. Dana.
Jeff.
Sup, dude?
What's up? Long time no see.
Yeah. Just saw you the other day.
Yeah, no kidding.
In Omaha.
Yeah, actually, we had a very astute, very smart listener that happened to look at our schedules. And pardon me if I say it wrong, but Tubatoni, if that's correct, noticed it and put a Slack alert out and said, hey, it looks like Dana and Jeff are going to be handing off the aircraft. So I'm in Omaha and Jeff is going to hand off the aircraft to me, and son of a gun, he was absolutely correct. So it was an absolute joy to see Jeff at the airport. Of course, I watched him taxi in on 2.5 wheels coming around the corner.
That is not true.
It's not true at all.
That's my normal taxi speed.
That's right. Exactly. No, it was absolute pleasure. I don't know. Are you gonna post our photo, the edited photo, Jeff?
Yeah, I will. Well, I'm going to do the unedited right now. Here, let me share the screen. Don't worry, folks. We're wearing clothing. Application window.
Yeah, but it has the logos.
Oh, I was hoping for a
I
laugh.
don't care. We borrowed some other people's uniforms. This is not the Acme uniform.
Which is which?
So, is that showing up right there? Yeah.
Yeah.
it is.
Whose hat have you borrowed, Dana?
I don't know. It was a captain's hat I found laying around.
They just happen to be on the jet bridge there for
what's
photo ops.
Photo ops, and of course the 4 stripes. Both of us have 4 stripes on, which is really. I did borrow somebody's jacket for that one because we're flying together.
Very smart.
Yeah.
So it's a great photo. It was just an absolute pleasure, and I think you forgot about it too, because I came down the jetway and you look over and you're like, huh? What are you doing here?
I completely forgot that you were going to be there, and then
Tis the season for
I say, Dan, I go,
bumping into
Dana.
people you know at the airport, huh?
Exactly.
He looked at me and said, "Who the hell's that?"
Yeah. Well, and I'm getting old. Yeah, I can't remember a lot of things.
Well, it's like when you see someone you know in a location that you're not expecting to see them, although seeing is what you guys do for work. That really shouldn't be too unexpected, but
yeah,
it always surprises you a little bit.
And funny enough, talking about seeing people I'm not expecting to see, I went to go down to see Jeff, and as I went, to go down the jetway, a lady almost walked right into me, and I looked at her, and she looked at me and like, Gail, Dana, what are you doing? What are you doing? She lives there. She's actually one of my close buddies that anytime you've heard me go down to Panama City, my friend that owns a condo down there and also rents it out, by the way. Not that I'm advertising that. Anyways, and I go scuba dive with him, a longtime scuba diving buddy, Gail. Got off the airplane, his wife. So we had a very nice conversation. So Captain Jeff brought in a very close friend of mine without even realizing and knowing it.
Oh, I knew that.
Well, yeah, of course you did.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was sitting right behind you in seat 1A. Anyways, so that was about it. I flew a 3-day, had a F-16 FO, that is flying in the Guard. He was actually very pleasurable to fly with, and we enjoyed the 3-day trip. We had a longer layover in Houston where I had met up with wasn't an official APG meetup. I actually posted that I would be out in Houston, but it was during the day, and it wasn't an official APG meetup. But my buddy Pat Garrigan, who flies for a Southwestern company, maybe named that. So we went ahead and what's that say? Anyways, we went ahead and got together for lunch and discussed how life was going. We were actually former instructors at another airline together. And so we've known each other a very long time. He actually went to Boeing. He worked there as an instructor. Boeing. And then
we're going to get some instruction on that today, I think.
We are, I think.
Yes.
So he worked over there, and so he caught up on a lot of things, and his wife currently still works for the company. So got a little insight as to what's going on there at the Boeing company and his company. You know what? He's one of those guys that did a mid-career change, went from flying back to civilian world, working a 9-to-5 type of job, and his dream was always to come back and fly. So that's what he's doing, and he's loving his life. And so it was very nice meeting up with him and having a very nice lunch. So that was about it as far as flying goes. It was an uneventful trip, although going into Omaha the night before. Remember when I told everybody about the airplane that I had the little issue with the burning smell in the flight deck that I diverted with precautionary landing? That was the same airplane I got the distinct pleasure of flying again. And Christine, as I like to call the airplane, didn't act up that day. So it was and Christine is in reference to an late 70s, early 80s movie about a car named Christine that was possessed. So that's where I named that airplane. So anyways, it was absolutely fine, and we had a very nice trip. So and of course, as you know, we are subjected to DOT inspections every once in a while, and I got a personal inspection as well as my FO, which was unusual that we both got selected for the DOT drug screening selection process on our last leg into the home base last night at 10 o'clock in the evening. So that was a pleasure.
That may have been my fault. Sorry.
Probably was.
Yeah, it was an anonymous tip.
Drop a minute.
It was.
You really should check this guy.
And I gave them the anonymous tip. So anyways, Jeff, just be watching out. That's all I have to say. Anyways,
okay.
That's it. That's all I have to say. It was a fun week of flying, enjoyable, and pretty much uneventful.
Okay. Let's see. Last week, Saturday morning is when we recorded the last episode, 403. Started a little bit of editing on the show, but not a lot. And because I had to go to I sing on Saturday and Sundays, although I didn't sing on Sunday because I ended up picking up a 2-day green slip Sunday, Monday. And I'm thinking, I'll be able to edit the show on my 2-day green slip. And no, I didn't have enough time to do anything on it, actually. But I don't even remember where I went overnight. I don't remember, but that's okay. And then went out on my normally scheduled trip, which was on Tuesday, and I just got back today, Friday, a 4-day trip. So I wasn't really thinking about it when I picked up the green slip. And then after I started flying, I realized I was going to be flying 6 days in a row. So haven't done that in a while.
Yay.
Is that why you look so grumpy?
Yeah, and that's why I am so grumpy. But actually, the second day of the 4-day was it was a 30-hour layover. So I was that was the day I ended up getting the show all edited and published and all that jazz.
There's nothing else to do in Birmingham.
Not a lot to do in Birmingham. That's true.
Alabama.
Yep. Not England. And yeah. So just did a lot of flying and weather for the most part, except for today. Today was very rainy, low ceilings, low visibility everywhere I went. Started off in Omaha. That wasn't bad, but getting to Atlanta was moderate to heavy-ish rain and low ceilings and viz. And then we went to Memphis. It was a little bit better, still low ceilings. And then back to Atlanta, it was starting to improve. Still a little bit of rain, but not bad. So good practice for the weather this time of year.
And Jeff, I have to mention one thing.
Uh-huh.
My first officer is a second generation. I forgot to mention this. Second generation Acme pilot. His dad, you and I both are moving up in seniority because his dad's retiring on the 21st of this month on the 777. And I helped him get an early booking on the jump seat so he could be on the jump seat on his dad's last flight from LA to Atlanta. So
neat.
Oh, that's great.
That was really that. Yeah, I used some of my friends and connections to make that happen, and we worked that out for him. So his dad's retiring, but you and I both, as a result, of moving up another number.
Yay! Okay,
I can tell your excitement.
He's not nearly as excited about it as you are, Dana.
Oh yes, well,
only because it gets him that much closer to retirement as well.
As the stuff flows downhill, it becomes proportionally larger, so that it affects me more than it does Captain Jeff. So
Yes,
it benefits me more.
Yeah. Okie doke. I think that is. Oh wait, Nick, am I supposed to do something with this in the intro folder from St. Benedict School?
Well, I thought you might like to, but
Yeah.
I don't have editorial control over this. You do.
I don't either. But I just noticed this over in the column in our intro folder. So, and it looks like some audio. So I'm going to play it. I actually haven't
Sounds
played
good.
this yet. So is it okay? All
It
right.
came as a surprise to us both. It was
Okay.
very nice of Rob.
Well, let's see what we're all going to hear this for the first time together right now.
Woohoo.
Hi, Captain Jeff. This is a special message from St. Benedict's Aviation Club. Dear Captain Jeff, Captain Dave, Captain Nick, and Dr. Seth, we hope that you have a very Merry Christmas. Blue skies, tailwinds, and unlimited visibility. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas!
Yay! That's awesome.
I
Great.
love that.
Thank you, Rob.
Brilliant. Yeah, and thank you, kids from the
Yes.
aviation group. That's
and they,
marvelous.
and you all over there don't normally say Merry Christmas, do you? You usually say Happy Christmas.
No, but no, we have multiple
Oh.
varieties. Merry
I
Christmas.
thought maybe they
is
just
definitely
did
one
that
of
for
them.
us. Okay.
Nope.
Wow, that was that
No,
was
you
great.
have not cornered the Marys, you know.
Well,
You just disregarded the happies.
Yes.
yes, yeah. Okay, well that's very cool. Thank you, Rob. Your kids are wonderful, and
Yeah.
cool.
Very kind
Thank
of you
you.
to do that.
what a wonderful Christmas greeting.
We hope
from
you all have a very Merry Christmas as well.
We do and
Absolutely. Yes.
very
They'll
happy
be
New
breaking
Year.
up before long. Lucky blighters.
Blighters. Okay.
Yes.
Let's see. Well, why don't we do a quick coffee fun thing? So you all can abandon me while I go over that. Look, they're already leaving. I haven't even
Wait,
started it yet.
hold on. Is this true, Jeff?
What's that?
Sunday?
Sunday. I don't
Sunday.
This
what?
coming Sunday.
What? What are you talking about?
Something about an anniversary?
Oh yeah. How did you know that? Was it somebody say something in the chat?
Yes,
room?
somebody
my
that's
God.
right on top of things.
Oh, he is very good. Yes, my anniversary of employment at Acme Airlines on Sunday will be 31 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
That's awesome.
Yay, we need a
Appreciate
round of
that.
applause for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Next.
Okay. Nick doesn't care. Obviously.
No, he left. He
He
didn't
left.
hear that at all. He has no idea what's going on.
I hope he feels bad too.
He doesn't.
No,
He doesn't. Not
I
at all.
don't think he will. Okay. It's time for the coffee fund.
Johnny, how much more coffee? No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
Okay. Coffee fund is what we do, or what a lot of you all do out there who want to support the show financially. And that's why we sing our version of the Java Jive. So if you're interested in helping out, supporting the show financially, please check out the Coffee Fund. A lot of great people over there. A couple different ways to do it. One is the classic method. And since the last episode, Alistair Kerr sent in his recurring contribution. Thank you very much, sir. And the other way to do it is to become a patron of the show via patreon.com. And since the last episode, we have a new producer, Reed. And so thank you, Reed, for that. And then Robert Fairbairn, you've heard us refer to this gentleman, and I use that term very, very lightly.
He just joined the chat room.
Oh, did he? Oh, I have to be careful now. He has been a patron for quite some time, and he just basically doubled his pledge. Wow, you didn't have to do that, Dick, but we do appreciate it. So, yay! He is what do we call an assistant senior executive producer now. So, thank you very much, Rob, for that. And if you want to join this great group of folks, head over to airlinepilotguide.com/coffee, and you'll learn all about how you can do it. And now it's time for your feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
Starting off with item uno from Steve. Hi, APG crew. Interesting event I found in the Aviation Herald I thought you might want to cover in the show. So it gives us a link. And it is in regard to a Air France Airbus A340-300 performing flight 681 from Bogota, Colombia to Paris Charles de Gaulle, France, with 219 passengers and 10 crew, was accelerating for takeoff from Bogota's runway 13 right. Before the takeoff roll, the runway anemometer showed winds from 211 degrees at 1 knot. During the takeoff roll, the winds changed to a headwind component of about 13 knots. At 138 knots indicated airspeed. Let's see. The captain began to rotate the aircraft for takeoff. When the winds changed to a tailwind component of 12 knots, the indicated airspeed reduced by 6. The aircraft became airborne. After liftoff, the winds further changed to a 25-knot tailwind component and a downdraft component of 4 knots, while the indicated airspeed reduced to 128 knots indicated. 6 seconds after the main gear left the ground, a wind shear oral warning occurred 3 times. A red wind shear warning from the flight management, I don't know what the GEC stands for. FMGEC. What's that, Nick?
Flight management guidance something.
Oh, the FMGEC.
It's the flight management computer. I
Okay.
can't remember exactly what the initials are.
And was displayed on the primary flight
guidance
display.
and envelope computer, I think.
Oh, okay. Very good. So the wind shear warning was on the primary flight displays for 15 seconds. The captain held the pitch attitude between 11 and 13. The aircraft remained stable at 5 feet AGL. The captain increased nose up inputs until alpha protection activated for 4 seconds. The tailwind component then began to decrease. The indicated airspeed began to increase, and the aircraft began to climb again, crossing the runway end at 58 feet AGL. And the subsequent climb profile had the aircraft pass all obstacles with sufficient margin. 21 seconds after becoming airborne, the wind shear warning stopped at 193 feet above ground, a pitch of 13 degrees nose up. 5 seconds later, at 258 feet above ground, the indicated airspeed increased through 145, which had been computed as V2. The aircraft climbed without further incident. The crew reported the wind shear to ATC. This report prompted the next crew to wait for 3 minutes before commencing their takeoff, and they continued to Paris without further incident. Now, again, this occurred on the 18th of August, 2017, and this is a final report from the Bureau de, I don't know exactly how to say that. I think I have a sound clip somewhere that has them pronouncing it, the BEA, the French investigative authority, I think. I don't think they're a regulatory.
That's right.
Okay. They did not release a formal conclusion of their investigation report, but following lessons learned from the occurrence. And then they go through and talk about lessons learned, management of risk of wind shear at takeoff, prevention-oriented strategy. They go into a lot of detail here. I won't read the whole thing. Assessment of wind shear risk at the Bogota El Dorado airport. Anyway, honestly, I didn't have a chance to read all of this. Did anybody get a chance to go into it a little bit more thoroughly?
I speed read it.
Okay.
And actually, I went on to the Aviation Herald link and looked at that. It was a nasty situation. I'll tell you why. Because the crew already had Toga selected for their takeoff, so they're at the maximum power they could. Had they had something in reserve that they could have engaged when they realized they were in wind shear, then they perhaps might have not lost so many heartbeats. It happened at a kind of a sort of no-go. You can't stop at this point. It would be very unwise to attempt to stop it. Just basically as you're lifting off, because then you're going to go off the end of the runway. And the aircraft, despite the change in wind direction and the strength and the downdraft, didn't actually touch the runway again. It managed to maintain its performance, and I put that down to Airbus's angle of attack limiting system, which allows the pilot to go full backstick if he feels it's necessary, and know that he will reach absolute CL max, the maximum of the lift the lift the wing can give him, without going any further and risking stalling, which is something you'd always be very conscious of if you didn't have this protection. You'd want to perhaps come to stick shaker, but be very reluctant to go beyond that. Whereas in an Airbus, you can go right to backstick. The alpha protection system they call there is locks the throttles at Toga, and it will select full power for you, Toga power. If you haven't already done it, since they're already there, they got no more out of that. But it also prevents someone from retarding the throttles, in the unlikely event that they should think that's an appropriate action. Once you're in Toga lock, that's not going to work. The airplane's stuck at full power until you disconnect the auto thrust. There were some comments here from some uninformed people in the Herald commenting on the aircraft's supposed lack of performance. And I'm just going to say that Bogota is a high hot airfield, and if you're taking off at max power and max weight for that, it really doesn't matter what aircraft you're in. If you've got no more power available to you, then you're going to be in exactly the same boat, because it doesn't matter how powerful your engines are. If you've got them set to maximum and you've loaded the aircraft with so much weight that it's at its maximum takeoff performance for that runway, you're going to be sitting exactly the same situation as this Airbus was. So it was just good that the Airbus was able to prove that its fly-by-wire protection systems were able to give the crew the confidence to do what they did to prevent the aircraft settling back down onto the runway again, and that the aircraft eventually had the performance to achieve all the gates that you're legally required to do so after takeoff, despite this very strong wind shear it went into.
So, yes, Dana?
I was going to say, I took the liberty of reading this as well. And my biggest takeaway on this, beyond the performance of the aircraft, because, once you get into wind shear, obviously, you can push the engines up through, in our case, up through the gates and get as much power as the mechanically possible, not humanly possible, from the airplane and fly through the wind shear as we're taught and told to do so. But the biggest thing I'm taking away from this is that I'm very happy that we fly here in the country that we do, because the a lot of information was missed here because of the language barriers. And I was reading that they that there were the the controllers were transmitting in Spanish, and they were transmitting the information, but because Air France wasn't speaking Spanish and didn't understand what they were saying, the information was kind of lost in translation, as one would say. And also, the technology at the airport isn't quite as good as what we would have here at most airports here in the States either. And that is, we have the ability for the wind shear warning systems that I don't think is really particularly present at this airport.
You mean like the facilities, like at the airport, it said the low level wind shear
exactly.
systems? Yeah,
exactly correct. So even though the air traffic controllers were actually giving out some of the information to other aircraft, it was in Spanish. So thus the Air France folks didn't understand what was being said, and thus really didn't understand what they were getting into, because it wasn't being directly reported to them, or for that matter, and I think at one point it says, that they didn't request the information. If I remember correctly, I read this several days ago.
Mm-hmm. But since the incident, they now are required by a company NOTAM to get to ask the controllers for the wind at the 2 thresholds of the runway used, and to take into account the most unfavorable wind before takeoff. So this is a high altitude, as Nick mentioned. It's hot. It's August. I'm assuming it's mountainous as well. And I don't think it stated that there was a thunderstorm or thunderstorm activity in the area, but I wouldn't be surprised if.
Oh, and Gustav in the chat room asks, why does wind shear occur? So thunderstorm activity is one reason. If there's a front approaching, that's another reason. Temperature inversions could do it potentially. So mountainous regions can sometimes have temperature inversions like that. And then anything where you have anything that's going to disrupt the airflow, so obstruction somewhere nearby, surface obstructions.
It's either going to be a change in direction or a change in speed, or both.
Both. Yep.
Yeah. So apparently, the data, the wind data at 4 runway thresholds, the controllers have that information available, but they did not give this to the crew in the takeoff clearance. And more generally, this information is not systematically communicated. The investigation showed that this data, indicating a continuing difference in wind speed and direction between thresholds 1.3 and 3.1 at the time of the event, was the only data which could have warned of a wind shear risk. So now, as I said, the Air France is requiring the crews to get the information, the wind information, from both ends of the runway, so that something like this doesn't occur again.
And that's almost like a poor man's wind shear advisory.
Yeah,
it really is.
I mean, it's a pretty dramatic change, isn't it? The guys had effectively calm wind at the threshold when they started rolling. As they got to the point where they were going to rotate and lift the nose off, they had about 11 knot of headwind. At the liftoff point, which isn't much beyond that, it has swung to a 13 knot tailwind. That is a 23 knot change of wind speed over the wing. And shortly after takeoff, they got to about 5 feet. By that time, the tailwind had increased to 23 knots. I mean, that's a humongous change.
I've never heard of anything like that.
I think it's incredible.
It is.
Say you had some of this, so hypothetical situation here for the airline pilots and the bunch. Say you had some of this information, but perhaps you requested the wind information, or had what you believe to be current stuff, but perhaps this was a possibility of experiencing some of this wind shear even after you make your go decision. What would you do differently in this case in terms of?
Well, as Nick mentioned, they were already basically at their maximum speed. So their maximum thrust. So there's nothing really you could do there. But if we were using a reduced thrust takeoff, we would, go directly to whatever the maximum allowable thrust would be. If you knew the one direction of takeoff was going to be more favorable than the other, then you would taxi to the other end of the runway and use that. You
ever calculate your VR differently?
Rotate
speed. Yep.
Yeah, we add basically up to 20 knots of speed to our V rotate, and then if you encounter a wind shear, then you keep the nose on the runway until 2,000 feet from the end of the runway, basically, and then you start your rotation regardless of what your speed is. So There are a lot of different things that we look at, in when we know that wind shear is a threat. And of course, if we know it's going to be a serious threat, then we just don't take off. But this crew didn't have any idea that this is what they were about to encounter.
No warning whatsoever. None.
Yep. No.
I mean, they had no clue. And again, the language barrier here, I think, played into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, to answer your question, Dr. Steph, that's where we're fortunate in the technology that we have here. We do have the low level wind shear advisory. We have mandatory reports by the control tower that if they're getting difference in winds based on different quadrants of the airport, then they have to report that to us. So
and my question was just to let people know that we talked a little bit about this in this case where they didn't have the heads up, the warning that there was anything going on unusual with the winds or wind shear. There wasn't anything differently that they could do, but if you do have that information, there are things that you can do to be prepared.
Yes,
potentially. Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
The wind shear warning worked well, didn't it? I mean, it actually gave it to them. Yeah, they got a wind shear oral warning occurred 3 times, and a red wind shear warning from the FMGC was displayed for 15 seconds. And it occurred 6 seconds after the main gear left the ground. So they didn't look like they got a wind shear ahead warning, but they certainly got a wind shear warning when they started encountering it.
Well, let me ask you this, because we're inhibited on from 80 knots and then above 100 knots, depending on which system you're looking at, until at least nose gear extension. Is that the same thing with the Airbus, or will it give you a warning throughout the whole takeoff roll?
I'd have to get my manuals out, which I no longer have available to me, sadly.
Okay.
I mean, you certainly can get a wind shear warning on the radar. So it wouldn't surprise me if the wind shear ahead was available before takeoff.
And if I'm not mistaken, the predictive warning wind shear warning system, the one that actually uses radar to scan ahead, if there were no thunderstorm cells in the area and it was just some other phenomenon that was causing the wind shear, it wouldn't have said anything. And in this case, that's true. The predictive warning system, the PWS, did not detect the wind shear.
Right.
That's true, but we also don't know what the crews saw on their radar as they lined up. So we don't know if they were actually looking at a thunderstorm cell that could cause a microburst.
Yeah.
So
I didn't see it here, but there's no current conditions at the airport, so we don't know if it was raining. Other than what the wind was doing, we don't know what the actual METAR was.
Right.
So, we're kind of wagging at this because, well, I mean, let's think of it. Most mountainous terrain airports, this is not an uncommon thing to happen. Even on Cavu, beautiful, perfectly clear days. Cavu being clear, unlimited visibility, right? So, or visibly unlimited. Clear
and visibility
unlimited. Cavu. So, this is, for example, someplace that Jeff, you and I have flown in quite a bit is Denver. I mean, that's on the front range. You can get the winds coming over the top of the mountains, and it causes quite a bit of rolling type of wind. Not that you can see it, but it's as mountain wave, as I mentioned earlier. So these are all possible possibilities, but without having that METAR or TAF or anything that tells us what exactly was going on at the airport, we're just kind of guessing into the wind here. Is no pun intended.
Perhaps just to finish up here, I saw with amusement that they reported the wind shear as they climbed out, and this report prompted the next crew to wait for 3 minutes before commencing their takeoff. Like, if you're going to go behind a heavy, you're going to be waiting for 2 or 3 minutes anyway.
Right.
So I'm thinking, it didn't really mean much to me.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, what?
I was like, why 3 minutes? Well, they reported wind shear. Start the timer.
Yeah, 3 minutes. I thought the same thing. It was like, just 3 minutes?
Don't think it's going to make any difference in 3 minutes time. Anyway.
Kind of weird. Oh, well. Okay. Moving on to item dos. From Mike O'Dorney via Facebook. He has some questions regarding terminology. 1. Weather vaning. Captain Nick, UK, mentioned the term weather cocking. I learned that term in the U.S. Air Force, and it comes from many weather vanes in the shape of a rooster. Is it still used at all in the U.S.? I've not heard the term in the U.S., but I have seen those rooster weather vanes, so I kind of understand, where that term comes from. But no, I mean, that's not something that I commonly hear. You, Steph?
No.
Yeah.
Weather
no.
vaning is the
weather vaning.
usual term here.
Yep. And look, I was good, Steph. I didn't play that sound clip.
Thank you.
Yes.
You can now, though.
No.
He'll fix that.
One
in
from
post,
Grand
I'm sure.
Cayman.
Yes.
Bahamas. Yeah.
No, Grand Cayman.
Oh, yeah.
Tarmac is the second terminology that he is asking about. Officially, in the U.S., tarmac is tar covered macadam or macadam.
Macadam, yes.
Macadam.
It's someone's name.
Macadam is a series of rock layers providing both good drainage as well as a strong surface to support heavy planes. The tar layer was about a 1/4 inch thick and pure tar without any sand or gravel mixed in. Many ferry fields had acres of tarmac, and it was still around in the 80s. Most airports nowadays are concrete or asphalt. Asphalt is usually a petroleum product mixed with gravel or sand and applied in layers, often reaching a thickness of many inches. Okay. Is tarmac an official term nowadays, or is the legal term hard surface? I don't know the answer to that one.
Neither do I.
Neither do I, but I do know we call it tarmac.
Yeah.
Prepared surface, perhaps. You see that a lot in reports when aircraft departed
the
prepared surface.
Yes.
The tarmac. I mean, we generally refer to that area that we're talking about as the ramp.
Mm-hmm.
In news reports, they will refer to any area of prepared surface at an airport as the tarmac. Generally.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we often call it the apron.
Or the apron. Of course, journalists refer to every prepared surface as a runway.
Oh, that too. It's either tarmac or runway, and it's usually neither.
Yeah. Let's see. I know it's often used as a nickname to describe all the non-grass dirt part of an airport, but has that evolved like Kleenex or Xerox to a generic term? I believe it has.
Almost certainly.
Yeah, I think everyone would understand.
Yeah. Item 3. I was listening to a tower recording at Atlanta, which tends to have plenty of Delta Airlines flights. Yeah. The plane reported taxiway Dixie. Here we go. I would assume that was a substitute for Delta. Occasionally, I hear the World War II phonetic alphabet, Abel, Baker, Charlie, Dog, which I assume is still allowed. Well, we don't. We use the aviation phonetic, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, etc. So now, here's the deal. Apparently, when I was first hired 31 years ago, I was kind of scratching my head on taxiway Dixie as well. And a lot of people explained to me, well, that's because we don't want the Delta Airlines folks getting confused when they tell them to turn right on taxiway Delta. And I'm thinking, that seems reasonable to me. And then I'm thinking, wait a minute, every other airport that Dana and I fly or any of us fly, still have taxiway D or Delta. They don't call it Dixie everywhere else, just in case a Delta pilot might get confused. So I think I don't believe it anymore.
Who's on first?
I think it's just a tradition, and it's the South, and Dixie is a
land of Dixie.
Yeah.
I'm just very, very fortunate because that doesn't confuse me as much as if we had, instead of taxiway Alpha, it was taxiway Acme, because if it was taxiway Acme, it would send me from.
That would be great.
Mm-hmm.
You guys need to start calling that. Don't you mean taxiway Acme?
Yeah, Roger, right on Acme to runway, whatever. Yeah. So as time has gone on, I've started thinking, you know what, that whole explanation of why in Atlanta they call it taxiway Dixie is bogus.
Are there so many taxiways that they couldn't just rename the one that would be Delta something different?
Yeah, just skip Delta completely.
Yeah. No confusion. Done.
Yeah. But no. Another question is regarding the compressor stall in a 777 out of LAX. The flight crew kept the gear down, which my guess would be conservative. If you're losing an engine, you are also losing part of your hydraulics, part of your electric power, and possibly sending loose engine parts everywhere, possibly through a wire or hose. If you raise the gear, you may not get it down again. You know better than me, so where am I thinking wrong? One of my flight instructors was flying off a carrier near Greece. After World War II, they were delivering a dozen PBYs to the Greek military. The chief pilot said, "Don't retract your gear. You might not get it down again." Well, I think in this case, I thought maybe we didn't talk about it when we were talking about the Philippine Airlines 777 that had the right engine failure taking off out of LAX. I think, all believe what happened there was because it happened so quickly and immediately after rotating the nose for takeoff, that the crew probably so involved with trying to, figure out how to take care of the engine problem. That was something that distracted them, and the, positive rate or positive climb or whatever your company uses as the cue for the other person to say gear up, that probably didn't occur because of the startle factor. And so when you don't hear positive rate, you may forget to raise your gear. And then I think further into the situation, they realized that the gear was still down, and then they raised it. I don't think it had anything to do with, keeping it down in case a piece of the engine hit something or other. But again, that's my impression. What do you all think?
Yeah, I think it's quite important to get the gear up on cue, because you don't really want to be climbing out single engine with all that drag hanging you down. And we've all got pretty reliable secondary methods of dropping the gear, even if we've lost a hydraulic system. So, that isn't really a concern for us. So it's good to get the gear up because of the performance limitations of trying to get airborne and climb away with only one engine, because there may be obstacles in your flight path, and you need that performance and that lack of drag to get the aircraft away and above them safely. So I think it was not a conscious crew decision, and I certainly don't think any crew would do that deliberately just because they were concerned they might not get it down again.
I agree. Dana, you want to take feedback number 3?
Oh,
sure.
What was that?
Number 3.
The coaster stuck to the
bottom
glass and frightened the poop out of me.
Clean up on aisle 3.
Clean up on aisle 3. Clean up on Jeff's chair because he wasn't sure what that was and scared him.
No, I didn't poop.
Thank you.
Pretty much.
Just checking.
Just check.
No more
double
than normal.
check. Well, he is that age that you'd have to double check. And Anyways, number 3, Sean. Window shades. I find it interesting to consider all the arguments around why window shades are required to be up for takeoff and landing in light of what seems to be inevitable future involving airliners with no passenger windows, as previously discussed several times on the show. Does that mean airplanes without passenger windows would not be permitted in countries with window shade rules? Question mark.
That is a good question.
Sean from Portland. That is a very good question.
So interesting. Yesterday, I took that little jaunt to Baltimore, Washington, and back. That was with American Airlines. And as part of the safety briefing, they did request that folks sitting in exit rows have window shades up for taxi, takeoff, and landing.
I seem to remember a long time ago.
I don't always hear that, though.
I know. I think I remember hearing that a long, long time ago at Acme, but I haven't heard it in recent years at all. Mm-hmm. But that's a good point, because we talked about, and many people have subsequently, chipped in and saying, having the window shades open is an important safety thing because it helps you with the orientation of the airplane, after you abort or have some kind of a rejected landing or whatever. And the fact that we didn't consider that the rescue crews coming to an airplane, they want to see, what's going on inside, et cetera. So what do you do with those airplanes that don't have windows, supposedly? Not sure we're ever going to see that actually, but
Yeah, I mean,
Probably
that's-
not. But it'll be a
Probably
bit
not.
like a
That's
cargo
concept.
aircraft, won't it? A lot of them don't have a lot of windows.
yeah. Or maybe
I
you
mean,
can
I
have-
guess we do have those now, though. There's just no passengers on them.
Yeah.
And that's in
Right.
cargo aircraft, right?
Yep. I think that's what Nick was saying. Everybody was talking over everybody else, I think. Isn't that what you said, Nick?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But my feeling is that if the regulator wants you to be able to see outside an aircraft and you've decided not to install windows, you'll have some sort of camera system instead, and he will insist on that being running off an essential buzz and available to crew in the event of emergency, blah, blah, blah. So if he feels you'll need a view outside, then you need to invent one, even if it's a bloody periscope that you stick out the roof.
Yeah.
You know, to answer your question, Sean, in my perspective, is that if you take a look at the new fancy technology that's out there, i.e., for example, in the 787, they have the automatic tinting windows with no window shades. I don't know the answer to this question, but this may be a possibility. And somebody that flies a 787 may know this, but in case of an emergency, does the flight attendant have the ability to flip a switch that takes all of those windows that have now been blacked out, per se, electronically with the tinting windows, and flip it to be able to see right through? Or, is it transparent enough that you can see through them good enough? So, I think the way of the future.
Part of that. I think I can answer part of that, Dana. I don't think they're completely black when they go black, but they're pretty much obscured. And I'm almost certain the cabin crew can alter the entire cabin's settings all in one go.
Steph,
So-
you've been on a 787, right?
I have indeed. Yep.
So what do you know about
as
that?
you select more what's what I'm looking for, so darker, it will become all the way opaque to your view of it. If you select it all the way down, all the way back up, it becomes very translucent. My understanding is they can all be controlled by cabin crew all at the same time as well.
So
Then-
you're
that's
sitting
right.
there at the window and you want to see outside.
You can still push the button. It'll come back
But
up.
can
and
they
then it's-
but obviously they can probably override it as well and say, you will not.
I
No
haven't,
soup for you.
Yeah, I haven't tested it that much.
Ah.
If they all go dark, I
Yeah.
tend to comply, and usually it's fine because it's either night or a time when everyone is trying to sleep. So that's just as much as you might want to see outside. Sometimes you need to have a little respect for your fellow passengers as well.
Yeah, good luck. But that answers the question for the future part of this. I think
Yeah.
that's the way the airliners are going to go, with the tinted windows that can be tinted and untinted, versus having an actual window shade.
Or use even better technology and just have the whole skin of the airplane completely translucent. in the
Ooh, I
event of a
like it.
crash.
That's pretty
Glass
cool.
airplanes. Nice idea.
Doesn't sound fragile at all.
No.
Well, they made glass on Concorde that could withstand the temperatures of Mach 2. I'm sure they can invent a tough glass airplane.
We don't have those
It'll-
people here anymore.
It'll be
They're all
just
gone.
like the windows of that new thing that Elon Musk built, and he demonstrated it
The
by throwing the
Cybertruck.
ball back. Yeah, the Cybertruck. It'll just be like that. Be
Oops.
really strong.
No,
Wow.
we need to.
The unbreakable
that.
glass.
Yes. Oops.
Oops. Oops.
Well, that must have been a fluke. Here, do it on this one right here next to it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oops. Steph, you want to read 4?
I would be happy to. Number 4 is from Christian Base in Richmond Hill, as we established last time. So he says, more on Snowbirds crash before the Atlanta Air Show. Greetings from the land of the RCAF Snowbirds. Thanks for covering the unfortunate loss of Snowbird 5 jet on October 13th, but the fortunate successful ejection by Captain Kevin Domen Grenier, who was checked over in hospital and released having sustained only minor injuries. If you look at the subsequent photos released by the Snowbirds' social media accounts showing him being released from the hospital, you'll notice that a female Snowbird is pushing him out in a wheelchair. What has mostly flown under the radar, no pun intended, is that is Snowbird 2, Captain Sarah Delaire, who, along with Captain Domen Grenier, formed the first ever married couple to be part of the same Snowbirds flying formation. Domin Grenier pilots, on the second line astern, while Dallaire flies on the inner right wing. Personally, I couldn't imagine continuing to have to fly a high-performance jet in formation while having to watch your spouse eject from a crashing plane, but that speaks to the professionalism of our RCAF pilots. It must have been very intense over the radios until they could be on the ground again. Here's to many more boring and uneventful flights for all. Christian Base.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. We like boring, uneventful.
I don't anymore. I want all the flights that I'm not on to be very exciting so I can talk about something.
Okay.
I just want to say, I'm glad I made it through. I don't think I slipped up anywhere. I have a hard time saying snowbird and snowboard. Like, for some reason, I always mix the two up. So hopefully I didn't.
Sounded like snowbird to me the whole time.
Okay. Yeah. Whew, there's also a ski resort.
I can always fix it on
snowbird. Yeah. Okay. It was
okay.
A lot of concentration there.
Right now, say snowbird and snowboard.
Snowbird, snowboard.
There we go. So now I can.
They sounded identical to me.
That's the problem. That's the problem. That's interesting. I did not know that about the two.
I didn't either.
Snowbird pilots. Very good.
Very interesting.
If they divorced, do you think they'd still be allowed to fly on the same team?
Maybe the flight doc might object to that.
In which case, which one of them would have to resign their position?
The one that wasn't as good a pilot as the other.
I'm sure they're all great pilots.
Yeah.
Yes. Without a doubt.
You'll notice I didn't say which one was probably the better pilot. I don't know.
No, neither did I.
So
HR's listening.
Yes. Nick.
So,
item 5, if you'd like.
Item 5.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what happened to that? Oh, okay, hang on a minute.
Oh, the old. What happened to that? I can't find it.
Yeah, exactly right. This is from Jacob. He says, hello. Not hello, Captain Jeff, or hello, APG crew.
A generic hello.
Just very boringly, hello. I just saw the artwork for the 400th show, and listening to you, Jeff, talk about how it was one of your all-time favorite aircraft. However, as soon as I saw the artwork depicting the swept-back wings and tail-mounted S-duct engine, it brought shivers down my spine rather than the fond memories I sure it brought you. And I can guarantee I wasn't the only one. Ooh. Let me give a brief explanation. To get a full air transport pilot's license in Australia is slightly different to the States. We have the 7 standard commercial pilot's license exams and then an additional 7 ATPL, air transport pilot's exams, 2 of which are based entirely on your beloved 727 performance exam and the flight planning exam. The latter exam has an all-time pass rate of just over 45%, meaning only 45% of the people that ever attempt it pass it. Unbelievable.
Wow. That's a low pass rate.
That's tough. That must be one tough exam. I won't try to explain the questions and how we need to get the answers. It's far too complicated. But if you ever come across to Australia, if you ever come across any Australian airline pilot who has sat the exam since 2012, even before that it was hard, but post-2012 it got way worse, ask them, and I'm sure they'll be happy to explain the horror. Basically, it's a map, pencil, and whiz wheel, E6B, I think you Americans call it, exam, but you need to have laser-guided accuracy to complete it. And they're not multiple choice either, or multiple guess, as most of us say. You have to type in the answer into a box and hope to God it's close enough. Oh, and it's a 3-hour exam, which takes 4 hours to complete, meaning that almost no one ever finishes all the questions in time, which puts even more pressure on you to make sure you get all the 5 marked questions correct. As an aside, I think when I did mine, it was based on the 707, which was even more ancient. To study for that exam, the majority of candidates spend $2,000 for a full-time course taking 2 weeks. then spend another few months revising it and getting faster and more accurate till you're ready to fail it for the first time. After you've failed the exam for the first time, you usually spend another few weeks cramming in every bit of knowledge about the 727 you can and memorize each and every performance chart and figure till you are ready to fail it a second time. Only then are you frustrated enough to take even more time off work and spend another few weeks studying, cramming, and praying to the 727 God to pass this stupid exam. By the end of it, you know the plane inside out. You know its fuel burn at each level, all the way up to 43,000 feet at all weights. You know the OEI flight levels that the plane will need to be able to maintain at ISA plus 15 and 60,000 kilograms, 62,000 kilograms, 64,000, 66, 68, and 70,000 kilograms. You have more or less memorized the time to climb, fuel burn, and aeronautical miles burned in the climb to flight level 300 to 390, and the plethora of formula you will need to use to convert numbers back and forth, inside and out, all over again, just to come up with an estimated mid-zone weight, which, if you get wrong, will put your final answer out by 200 kilograms, which for a flight that will burn 14,000 kilograms of fuel is outside the accuracy needed to pass the exam. Unbelievable.
When I was reading this, I thought, oh my gosh.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think
I'd
ever be an airline pilot in Australia.
Exactly right. Those Aussies, I take my hat off to them. I'm rambling. It's been only 12 months since I passed the exam, and the scars it has inflicted still haven't left me. I shudder each time I see any three-engined aircraft. So, a long story short, you have just given any Australian that has an ATPL or just passed the ATPL exams aviation PTSD by showing us such a horrific image of the monster that is the Boeing 727, albeit a very well put together image by Nick. Thank you. Thanks for the show, but for the love of God, please don't ever speak of that one ever again. Sincerely, on behalf of all Australians, Jacob.
Well, Jacob, we had no idea what kind of stress this was going to put you through, and just so that can you see that?
Oh my God! They're screaming!
Oh my
Australians!
God! He's going to have to go take some Xanax or something now. My word!
That beautiful three-holer.
Yes, it is. It is. I had no idea. We had no idea. Sorry for all of you out there who have had to go through this.
I can totally understand though. That sounds. Yeah.
Sounds horrid.
I didn't go through something much different than that with the ATP that we have to take here. It's very similar. We had to do a lot of those same calculations.
Yeah, but I don't think it was quite as extensive as what he was explaining.
Not quite as bad, no.
Yeah, and a 3-hour test that really takes 4 hours and all that kind of stuff. And I think we still had multiple guess.
Yes, we did.
Answers and not calculated. And yeah.
I became very good at multiple guess.
Yes. Wow. Well, I'm so sorry, Jacob, and all of you Australian airline pilots out there. You know what? The people that came up with that exam, they must just be evil devils. Or something.
I'm sure.
727 pilots.
Probably. Yeah, all these new age people. I'll show them what it's like to fly a 727. I don't think I ever had that knowledge level on the 727 for performance. But anywho, looks like it. Yes.
Oops, sorry.
That's right.
I hit my mic. I haven't done that in a very, very long time.
Okay, well, you're holding your hand up like you wanted to say something else or not?
Yeah, I was just saying we're about a 2-hour mark.
Yep. Okay. I was just about to say, looks like it might be about time for us to play this week's installment of the Old Pilot's Plain Tales. And this one is entitled Black Christmas. Please take a listen.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales. Black Christmas. As Christmas approaches, it's sometimes hard not to get upset by the little things in life that have no real meaning, and forget that others might be having real troubles. This story might help to bring things back into perspective. It was on the 15th of November 1946 that Mrs. Greenwood packed up her suitcases and with her 2 children left Houston, Texas, to join her husband for Christmas. She was making an early start as she had some 9,000 miles to cover before she would reach Shanghai, where her husband worked as a pilot for the CNAC. They were going to be tired after their long journey, but their excitement at the thought of being together again kept them going. The China National Airways Corporation, or CNAC to the Americans, had started in 1929 when the State Council in China approved a contract whereby Curtiss Wright were loaned $1 million to assist in the development of aviation in China. A year later, Pan American gained an interest, and one trip, the president of Pan Am made the announcement that, employing American aircraft manned by American pilots, the CNAC was to start new routes across China. A few years later, the U.S. ambassador to China was able to send a letter from Hankow to the States in which he praised the service rendered by the air companies, making it possible for the rapid transport of mail by bridging the Pacific in only 5 days. He concluded by saying that the bringing together of distant cities in this great country had been in accordance with the best traditions of the genius of the American people. Shortly before America's entry into the Pacific War, the CNAC pioneered the famous routes over the Himalaya Mountains between India and China, known as the Hump, a story I told in an earlier tale called the Aluminium Trail. The United States had a long aviation history that linked them to China that included such marvelous exploits as those accomplished by the Flying Tigers. They were the first American volunteer group of the Chinese Air Force who were recruited by President Roosevelt's authority before the attack on Pearl Harbor brought the States into the war. The group achieved notable success during a low period of the war to give hope to America that it might eventually defeat Japan. 19 Flying Tiger pilots became aces with 5 or more air-to-air victories. When Christmas Day 1946 came around, a heavy blanket of fog lay over Shanghai. It's a city on China's eastern shore where the Yangtze and the Huanghe rivers meet. The climate there has been likened to that of San Francisco, with a morning fog that usually burns off by noon, but on that day, instead of dissipating, the fog began to thicken into a dense layer that obscured the world from those above. At the city's Runway airport, tensions rose as the visibility failed to improve and eventually dropped to zero. The airport staff, who had been enjoying the Christmas festivities, began to pace around nervously as they heard the engines of incoming flights droning overhead. Like many countries, the ravages of the Second World War had left China woefully short of resources, and they had been struggling to rebuild following the devastation of the Japanese occupation. In addition, a vicious internal struggle between the nationalists under Chiang Kai-shek and the communists under Mao Zedong was sapping the ability of both sides to rebuild. Runway Airport was a hub for CNAC, but it was woefully inadequate for the growing aviation industry based there. The runway was grass and gravel and hard to spot on a clear day, let alone under a blanket of dense fog. The only navigation aid was a long-wave radio beacon, and the runway was lit by a single lamp at each end. William MacDonald was CNAC's chief pilot. He came to the company after years in China with the Flying Tigers. He was worried about the airline's safety record, and rightly so. Over the past few years, they had lost 32 aircraft, killing 100 people, but much of this had been flying notoriously dangerous hump missions. Even so, he was determined to improve matters and had insisted that his crews train on a new ground-controlled approach radar system that had been fitted to the U.S. military airfield at Kiangwan, 15 miles north. A good controller could talk an aircraft down to just above the runway, giving a pilot a chance to see the landing area through poor visibility. All that the incoming pilot needed was a working radio and the instrument flying skills to accurately follow the controller's instructions. Despite McDonald's insistence that his crews get training on flying a GCA, the tower at Kiangwan had a faulty power supply that rendered the radar unusable for a lot of the time, so by Christmas, only a few of the 42 pilots who applied for training had been able to complete a single landing using the system. The senior tower controller at Lunghua wrote that the weather that day was poor. It had been raining persistently, with low cloud and fog dominating the whole eastern seaboard. Many flight and ground personnel were celebrating the holiday in Shanghai. The large influx of American servicemen to the city over the past year guaranteed a surfeit of parties and dances at military bases and clubs. Among the partiers was CNAC pilot Peter Gutierrez, who wrote about the day in his memoir. By the time I arrived back at the house, the weather was 0-0, no visibility all, he said. It now sounded as if there were several planes milling around upstairs. The tower controller had been monitoring radio transmissions, and by late afternoon the staff knew that 4 flights were still en route to Shanghai, all originating from Chongqing, about 1,000 miles to the west. CNAC flights 115, 140, and 147, and CATC flight 48. Captain Rolf Prius was piloting Flight 115, a C-46 Curtiss Commando carrying 31 passengers and a crew of 3. Prius, aged 30, was an experienced pilot, having spent almost a year flying the hump over the Himalayas, that notoriously dangerous route. Growing more and more concerned about fog, Prius radioed another flight, captained by Greenwood, over Nanking. They decided that their best chance was to fly on to Shanghai. The captain of Flight 147, Francis Michels, was born in Belgium but learned to fly in the US during the Second World War. He later became an instructor, training US and British military pilots in California before joining CNAC in September 1945. His C-46 carried 17 passengers and 3 crew. Tommy Wing was captain of the lone CATC, Central Air Transport Corporation, Flight 48, a C-47 with 7 passengers and 3 other crew members. Wing was a U.S. citizen born in Chicago and was previously a CNAC pilot. He was known for his sense of humor and was well liked by his colleagues. Unfortunately for him, CNAC had 2 payroll schedules. The one for Chinese pilots was considerably lower than the one for Americans, and Wing's employers placed him on the Chinese scale. For additional income, he had taken to smuggling cigarettes, but he was found out and fired. He simply walked over to the CATC offices, an airline that paid the same wages to all aircrew, and was hired. Tommy Wing was flying a C-47 and was low overhead, circling the field. The chief pilot was trying to contact him by radiophone but couldn't get through as the aircraft's equipment wasn't operating properly. Wing had tried to fly a GCA at Kiangwan Airfield, but without a working radio, it proved impossible. Another pilot recalled that he had probably never heard of a GCA and certainly had never practiced one. He shot the approach, but must have been a little high and was told to take a wave off. After several attempts, at around 5:45 in the afternoon, Wings aircraft banked to the left on descent. The C-47 struck the roof of a nearby building and cartwheeled into a built-up area, killing several people on the ground. All 11 souls on Flight 48 were lost. Flights 140 and 147 had now arrived overhead Shanghai. MacDonald had no other option, so he ordered them to Kiangwan. Greenwood arrived first, but he found that he couldn't establish contact with the tower due to an intermittent radio failure in his DC-3. Unable to use the GCA system, he turned back to Longhua, leaving Michels circling Kiangwan at 4,000 feet. At the controls of Flight 140, Captain James Greenwood was expecting his wife and children to arrive from the States to spend Christmas with him. Greenwood was relatively new to CNAC, but he was an accomplished pilot with years of commercial airline experience. Originally from Houston, Texas, he had come out to China because the salaries were better there. He was flying a DC-3 with 27 passengers and 2 other crew members. Michels was a big man, well thought of by all, but after Christmas 1946, he was judged a real hero. When he reached Kiangwan that night, his radio was able to pick up the ground instructions as he nosed his C-46 down towards the runway. He knew about the GCA system, but had never used it. Another pilot, Oliver Glenn, wrote later that the secret of GCA was the pilot's faith in the system. Michels, truly flying blind, had surely mustered all his faith to follow the instructions that came through his headphones as the operators, watching Flight 147 on their radar, began talking him down. Michels later told a colleague that he didn't know if he saw the runway lights or touched down first. At Longhua, Chief Pilot MacDonald ordered the ground crew to pour strips of gasoline along the runways and light them to make up for the dim lights which failed to penetrate the fog. MacDonald talked to Greenwood as best he could through the faulty radio, calmly trying to guide the pilot in. In the tower, his engines could be clearly heard, but his flashing navigation lights were invisible, nor had anyone seen his landing lights. All was deathly silent on the field. The only sound was that of the plane in the distance, getting louder and louder as it approached. MacDonald said that he was shaking so hard he could hardly conceal it from those around him. And over the radio, Greenwood's calm voice announced that he had lost an engine. MacDonald stepped out onto the balcony of the town in case the aircraft could be seen. The spluttering of an engine could be heard, then an eerie silence for a few seconds. The sound of the impact exploding from the darkness was a heartbreaking noise. Another aircraft had gone down. It was now abundantly clear that the last approaching aircraft was in extreme danger. The crew would have heard the last transmissions of CNAC 140. Prius, aboard Flight 115, was the only one of the 4 pilots who had experience with the GCA system. But the radio in his C-46 couldn't transmit on the radio frequency required to use it. Now perilously low on fuel, he called into Longhua that he was on a long final. He called again that he wasn't happy with his first approach and would go around. He flew back and forth over the field several times, coming down as low as he dared. His chief pilot talking to him all the time, sounding calm and confident. The fog had seemed to thin a little. When it sounded as if he was nearing short finals, there was a sudden, loud, dull thud. And then, again, that awful silence. It took rescue workers hours to find the wreckage. The aircraft had crashed short of the airport in an area crisscrossed by canals, so naval craft were used to reach it. The C-46 had hit the ground and then skidded into a schoolhouse, fortunately empty, and started a small fire. The wreckage was massive, and the personnel who reached the scene declared that all 31 passengers had died. Prius survived, but with disfiguring injuries that caused enormous pain for the rest of his life. He was sent back to the United States for treatment and had his left leg amputated a few months later. Of Greenwood, whose wife was arriving after her long journey, it seemed that he had aligned his aircraft well, but out of fuel, he had slowed and stalled. The aircraft came down at the intersection of the runways, skidding 1,000 yards before somersaulting. When the rescue team arrived, it was too late to save most of the victims. But men waded through heavy rain and mud to reach several passengers. It was thought that of the 30 people on board, 10 survived. Captain Greenwood was not one of them. The final count of those who died on Black Christmas, as it came to be called by the CNAC pilots, is a little difficult to calculate. Records are incomplete, eyewitnesses disagree, and the aftermath was so horrible that confusion overtook record keeping. Several reports had the body count at 62, yet one official report had it as high as 71. Having traveled 9,000 miles to join her husband for Christmas, all Mrs. Greenwood and her children could do was to return to the United States with her husband's body. After such an awful event, the only heartening discovery was when the salvage crews lifted the wreckage of one of the aircraft. They found a 4-year-old child who, at first, they thought was dead. After the crash, little Wong Didi had cried for his mother, but having received no answer, he had quietly gone to sleep.
Wow, such an uplifting Christmas story. Thank you, Captain Nick.
Did we get did we get a happier one in the weeks leading up to Christmas?
We're not hearing you.
Yeah.
There we are. Okay, good.
Sadly, it's that time of the year when, I thought it was probably best to start off on the low side and then build up something happy.
only can go up from here in terms of
I know.
And cheerfulness.
It is a very sad story, but I mean, it was a day, I suspect, which was matched by many others in that time during the aviation industry's efforts to, just cope with the weather and the technology they had at the time. It was, almost inevitable that they were going to lose aircraft and people were going to die. But just having it all happen on Christmas, and it was just, a culmination of a dreadful series of events.
Yeah, very much so, especially the long 9,000-mile journey for Mrs. Greenwood and her children, only to have to take the body of their husband / father home.
I have no idea how people can be met with such awful news and get through the rest of their lives, because I'm sure she did. I wish I could have found out something about what happened to her afterwards, but sadly there's very little information other than a few memoirs and a few paper clippings to get a lot of the background of this. But it was a dangerous place to be flying out there with very little technology. Old aircraft I say old aircraft, they were World War II aircraft, but they didn't have the sophistication that we just take for granted nowadays.
Yeah. Wow.
Still, a great tale I loved, because, we've all faced bad weather. And I don't know if you've ever done it, but sometimes I think to myself, well, if the instrument landing system fails and I'm low on fuel and it's fogged out, as can happen here in the UK, sometimes you can get the whole of the south of England can fog out.
Mm-hmm.
Think to yourself, well, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I get this airplane down safely and so all the passengers, anyway.
Yeah.
I've
weigh
actually
your
had
options and pick the best available, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've actually had that happen to me.
Oh, tell us more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I was back in my learning to fly days, back when I had my buddy that had a 182, I went down to Middle Georgia to pick up his airplane for him. And Cavu, beautiful night. I mean, when I say Cavu, there was no forecast for anything, for rain, fog, clouds, anything. So just decided to come back with the fuel they had on board the aircraft. And as I was approaching from the south of the Hartsfield Airport, I was going up into PDK, Petrie DeKalb Airport, which is just north and east of downtown Atlanta. Started listening to ATIS, and ATIS is reporting 1/4 mile in fog.
Ooh.
I was like,
ouch.
Oh, what do you mean 1/4 mile in fog? Where is this coming from? So I listening to air traffic control and a couple of corporate jets went in, tried to make the approach. They came out missed. And I started thinking to myself, okay, well, what are my options here? Coming up on Atlanta. Atlanta's clear. However, there was an entirely huge fog bank that was moving over from the winds were out of the east, and Jeff will know this. When the winds are out of the east in Atlanta, it tends to bring in low clouds. And so I decided to listen to ATIS there, and at Hartsfield, it was still pretty good, but it was decreasing. And I opted to try to go into Fulton County. By the time in Fulton County was reporting, I want to say, I don't remember specifically, Fulton County is the airport that's actually closest to me, right where I live now here in the west side of Atlanta. And it's in a bit of a valley, so it won't quite fog in as quick if stuff is coming in, because you can get below it. So they were reporting, I think, 300-foot ceilings with about 1.5 miles visibility and rapidly decreasing. So I opted to go in and shoot the approach into, and mind you, this is in the 182. And at night, no, it wasn't during daytime, this is at night, and shot the approach right down to minimums at Fulton County. And when I tell you, by the time I taxied the airplane to the general aviation ramp, it was down to, barely visible to be able to taxi the airplane, maybe 1/16 of a mile. So it rolled in real fast. And I remember that here I am in an airplane, single engine airplane with not a whole lot of fuel. I mean, it has a capacity to carry a whole lot of fuel, but when I went down to Middle Georgia to pick up the aircraft, well, it was late in the afternoon, early evening. There was no general aviation fuel available at that point. The FBO was closed, or I don't even think there was one there. I'm forgetting whether there was. I would have had to stop someplace to get more fuel. I said, well, I've got 20 gallons on the airplane. That's not an issue. I'm just doing a short hour flight. Yeah, that became the pucker factor real quick, because I was running out of options real quick. Wow. And the problem was not that I couldn't get anyplace else necessarily, for better weather to the south, but I was running out of fuel without the ability to go anyplace else. And that was a typical situation, one of those situations where the forecast was completely for clear skies.
Were you sucking the cushion through one of your body's
cavities? Yeah, the pucker factor. I mean,
I think I would
have real fast. Let me tell you, because here I am. I mean, I'm not the experienced aviator I am now, and even with being the experienced aviator now, I mean, how many times do we come in to a high density airport like we go into, Jeff? And you look at the fuel load, and it's pretty close to what I consider my absolute minimum. I won't go below a certain number. But, all it takes is an emergency aircraft or an unexpected weather event or, a go around. And the next thing you know, the pucker factor is going to get up there real fast, because we're not going around with a whole lot of fuel like if we had an alternate.
Right.
So I don't know what your number is, but I certainly don't. If anything below 6,500 pounds on landing, I just won't do it. Period.
Yeah, mine's lower.
Came back to
What,
the
6,000?
I don't want to talk about
62.
62.25.
64.99.
I'm just throwing out that number, but it's in that range. I mean, it really it's the time of day and what, if it's nighttime and, there's a whole lot of factors that go.
There are a lot of things you have to consider.
Exactly.
That. Yeah.
But that can happen to anybody.
Yes, Nick.
Going back to the story, obviously the crashes were tragic, but one of the people I felt very sorry for was the chief pilot, Mac McDonald. Those were the days when chief pilots really ran the whole show, and I'm just trying to imagine how he must have felt when 4 aircraft came in and only one landed safely, and that was still, as the guy admitted, he really didn't see anything until his wheels touched the ground. And he lost 3 airplanes, 2 from his company and 1 from the next door company, all on the same night. That must have been just an awful time to live through for him. And to be standing there in the tower, trying to listen to your guys trying to get in. Geez, that must have been tough.
Yeah. Wow, what a story. I'd never heard of that. So thank you for...
No, neither have I until I came across it. So
excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you, old pilot, Captain Nick.
I love it.
All right. Steph, we haven't heard your nice voice in a while. Why don't you do item number 6?
Nice voice?
Yeah.
I wish you'd use it.
Maybe. Sorry. I know I've been a little quiet here. I apologize for that. Some other things going on. Anyway, I'd be happy to read. Is it number 6 that we're on?
Yep.
I'm back on in here. So this is from Tim. He says, greetings from Arkansas, or Arkansas if you're the old pilot.
I love Arkansas. Great place.
Yes. I've had plenty of time to discover new podcasts lately. He's wandering away from listening to us. I see how this is, Tim. Anyway, he says, and I just had to write in about one I just listened to called No Such Thing as a Fish, episode 298, and specifically from 2 minutes 30 seconds to 14 minutes 30 seconds. He gives the link to the podcast that he references. While not a flying podcast, this episode did start off talking about emotional support animals and had some interesting, funny facts about flying and even some balloon facts. This may not be worthy of a mention on an episode. Well, here it is. But I thought you all might enjoy listening to their conversation. I just finished listening to APG 402, and I must say it is amazing how Captain Nick is able to evoke such emotions through his storytelling. Listening to the banter between all of you shows why the show seems to be such a success. It sounds like you are all good friends, even when off the podcast. Well, at least 50% of the time.
Yeah.
We're friends 50% of the time?
Half the time, yeah.
Half the time.
Yeah. We're just
Love hate for sure. Anyway, he says, keep up the great work, and who knows, maybe someday I'll end up on one of your planes before they're retired. Tim from Arkansas.
I hope so.
I used to listen to No Such Thing as a Fish.
I listen to it intermittently still. Yeah.
Is it still going?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
They are the elves. There's a TV program here called QI, which stands for Quite Interesting. And it is a wonderful kind of quiz show, but created about interesting facts. And they ask people things you'd expect to be true or false, etc., etc. It's very amusing, very well done. Stephen Fry used to be the quizmaster. And the elves who do all the background work, finding out all the facts, started their own podcast with all the leftover facts.
So it's very interesting. You listen to it and they'll say, this was my most interesting fact of the week. And then they all launch into discussion about it. And it's clever stuff.
It is clever stuff because they're clever people, and they're particularly going for interesting, unusual, and strange things that you might not believe, but are true.
We should start doing that.
What, being clever?
Yeah,
Being clever,
being clever and funny.
strange.
Or strange?
That too.
Looking up
Interesting
facts
would be a
beforehand?
good thing.
Facts,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
The
some
fact
facts.
thing.
Yeah,
Wow, that would be different.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll take that under advice. But
All
anyway,
right.
yeah, I think we'd recommend No Such Thing as a Fish. It's a great podcast. So.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for sending the feedback in, Tim. Let's see. Let's do 7 here from Dale. Hello, all. Very inclusive. My first time with feedback for the ABG team. And first of all, a big thank you for what you do. You're welcome. This event may well have already been on your radar scopes, but worth highlighting, I thought. This is almost literally in my backyard. I live in the Bay of Plenty in New Zealand. Oh, I love that. Bay of Plenty.
I like that.
In New Zealand. And the small shape of White Island on the horizon, often with some steam clouds above it, is part of the scenery here. The events of this week are as shocking as they are saddening. New Zealanders live with the knowledge that we are in a geologically active country, but even with the best information available through our scientists monitoring such things, volcanoes can and do erupt without enough warning. This article demonstrates the bravery beyond belief of the helicopter pilots who responded immediately to the event and saved many people's lives directly as a result. I have utter admiration for those who did this in the very literal face of a volcanic eruption. In contrast to this, I've been equally surprised and disappointed by the subsequent comments from the GA piloting community here within New Zealand regarding the officials that be preventing more flights there to recover bodies of those that perished immediately. I work in high hazard environments, and I am well versed in the risk-based approach to dangerous environments, especially where the air quality is compromised. This follow-on response showed me in a personal way that not all pilots look at risk management in the same way. It's not a, quote, red tape preventing the recovery of the deceased. It's a lack of understanding of the risks on site. No one will authorize aircraft to land there in an environment that may have high concentrations of heavier than air and poisonous gases at ground level in an attempt to recover the dead. It is a horribly sad situation, but not one to make worse by putting more lives at risk. And I thought that this was worth sharing. I hope you find it an interesting and thought-provoking read. Kind regards and well-placed thermals for all the glider pilots out there. And this is Dale Eastham. And then he included a link to this article. And why don't we just put the link to the article in the show notes and everybody can read it on their own, or if there's anything you guys want to talk about.
Oh, I was just gonna jump in real quick.
Yeah.
And kind of a small world. A doctor that I know from residency training actually previously lived in New Zealand and then moved there just recently again to work in a small community-based hospital. And it turns out that her hospital was kind of the ground zero for the first evacuees from the White Island. And it was she had a really kind of intense post on social media the other day just to say how much it impacted her, and she'd never seen anything like that before in terms of the severity of injuries, and just to keep all of those people and their thoughts and families and first responders in their thoughts. So it was.
What were the main injuries?
Burns.
Burns. Oh, okay.
Burns through heat and also from the acidity of the eruption.
Yeah,
I gather that there were people there with their clothes that were pretty undamaged, but underneath they had the most appalling burns because of a combination of the dreadful acidity of the gases, I guess, and also with a combination of the heat. But I don't think people see a volcano erupting and they see the ash and they think, well, actually, look, the whole rest of the island's fine. I don't think they have any comprehension of the danger of the gases that are coming out that are invisible. And the place has just become one toxic no-go zone until it all comes down. But I mean, I feel appallingly sorry for those that were put in danger and perished. But what's the point of pouring more fine people into that situation just to put them at risk of suffering exactly the same?
Yeah,
and no doubt there's a lot of people who do want to help, but
some marvelous, well-meaning people, but
you're able to safely do without more lives and resources at risk. And there will be a time and place to pick up those efforts again when it's safe to do so.
Yep.
Anyway.
All right. Well, thank you, Dale, for that. And again, folks, the article will be in the show notes for you to read. All right. We have some audio feedback from Class Bravo Chris. He says, my first audio feedback. Bottom line, do planes really taxi out and take off with such thin weight and balance margins? Have a listen. Oh, I see the problem here. He wasn't being bashful. Jeff forgot to put the slider up.
Hey, APG crew, it's Class Bravo Chris with my first ever audio feedback coming to you from the San Francisco Bay Area, or maybe as Captain Nick might call it, Frisco or San Fran. Don't ever call it that, actually. Hey, I got a question for you. I thought the audio feedback would be easier since it's kind of a detailed question and a two-part question. Here's the first one. I was on a American Airlines flight recently. I know Steph will appreciate this, flying out of Charlotte on a Airbus A321, beautiful aircraft, had the luxury of sitting up front and was noticing just before pushback, a lot of what looked to be commuting flight attendants and pilots getting on the plane. And at one point, it seemed that maybe there wasn't going to be either enough room for all of them or jump seats, or maybe just there was a weight issue. And so while I was sitting up there and listening to what was going on, I noticed the captain at one point was just furiously typing into the flight management system, presumably doing a weight and balance check. Interesting to watch, and eventually said, okay, let's go. Close the door to the cockpit. They closed the door to the aircraft. Everybody, all the commuter flight attendants and pilots sat down. Wow, I think there was one on a jump seat. And then, of course, the other areas in the galley where some of the flight attendants sit when those seats are not in use. So we push back. We head out, start taxiing, engine start, and then the captain comes on and says, hey, we'll get going here in just a second. Trying to get some numbers here. As soon as we have those numbers, we'll be on our way to San Francisco. He did not say San Fran or Frisco, thank goodness. So interestingly, 5 minutes go by and suddenly the captain comes back on and says, well, actually, bad news, folks. We've got to go back to the gate. We are too heavy. So my question, first question, after all of that number crunching, what went wrong here? We had to go back to the gate. Well, I have a little bit of an answer to that, but I'm curious as to why the margins were so close. So we get back to the gate. The captain had to take the pilot jump seat passenger, I guess a commuting pilot, off the plane for weight issues. One person gets back on the PA and says, not perhaps as eloquently as Captain Jeff might say it, that the wind had changed directions. And in Charlotte, they decided to use a different runway because of that. And because of that, the weight and balance figures, or the takeoff weight figures, no longer were valid at the current weight that we pushed back with. Okay, fair enough. So we're on our way. Here's where things got really interesting. So we had one less passenger on board. As we're taxiing to the now active runway, I could sense that while we are waiting in a line of about 4 aircraft, that the engine sound was higher than normal, almost as if the captain or the flying pilot was putting the throttles at a higher RPM than might be typical for sitting and waiting for takeoff. I noticed this on a few occasions. So we would move forward a few feet, wait for the next aircraft to taxi into position and hold. And while we were doing that, the brakes were on and set and the throttles were higher, no question about it. So I'm wondering, have you ever done this? And perhaps was the flight crew still a bit concerned that we were a little bit heavy and wanted to try to burn more fuel by running the engines at a higher RPM just prior to takeoff to make sure that the fuel and the weight and the margins were where we needed it to be? I love what you guys are doing. happy holidays. I'm not sure if this will be read before or after the new year, but all the best and all the most amazing blue skies to you in 2020 and beyond, and into episode 500 at some point there in the next however many months or years. All right. It's Class Bravo Chris from San Francisco saying thank you. Talk to you soon.
Ooh, Class Bravo Chris. Great pipes, man. From Frisco. I'm sorry, San Fran.
San Fran.
No, it's actually called Baghdad by the Bay.
Oh, boy.
SF. You could
That
call
is Captain Nick at
you could call it the
airlinepilotguy.com.
Golden City, but I don't. The City is another one. Fog City is a good one. Or just City by the Bay. How's that?
There you go.
Am I forgiven?
I don't know. You'll have to talk to Class Bravo Chris about that. Anyway, I'm so glad Class Bravo. We've gotten a lot of feedback from Class Bravo Chris over the years, and what took you so long to send in audio feedback, man? That was awesome.
Mhm.
So I think Dana and I were both kind of shaking our heads about things. At first, before Dana gets into the burning fuel and that sort of thing, I think it's just my feeling that what you think that you saw the captain doing as far as doing landing, takeoff data and that calculations and that kind of thing in the cockpit, I don't think that's exactly what was going on, because I believe that American Airlines is very much like Acme, where there's like a separate department that does that kind of load, that does all the numbers and performance data and everything else. And the reason why I say that is because Dana and I know many, many times, especially here in Atlanta, American is just notorious for having to pull off to the side and wait for their numbers. And it's not the numbers that they're calculating themselves with their little computers. It's they're waiting for their company to send their numbers via ACARS. So that's the only thing I want to say right off the bat. But I think Dana will have a good explanation of likely what happened here, and the feeling that you had about the higher engine RPM. I believe you might be onto something there.
Yeah, and in the fact that I flew out of Dallas for several years, well, actually a year and a half, I shouldn't say several years. That was quite a common occurrence, is that AA, American Airlines, sitting out there waiting for numbers. And what the numbers are specifically is the weight and balance numbers that the aircraft is within the weight and balance envelope, as well as in the numbers that they're referring to are the takeoff numbers for speeds, the V1, VR and V2 speeds, and that they are legal to depart. Now, more than likely, and going back to the question of all these crew members getting on the airplane, you got to remember, more than likely, I'm willing to bet that some of those crew members are probably deadhead crew members, and that they are positive space on the aircraft. The jump seater, obviously, in the flight deck, obviously was taking a free ride home, probably, or going to work. One of the two. Usually that's, especially if they're in uniform, that's usually what's going to be the case. But I agree with you, Jeff. There is nothing pre-flight. I mean, he may have been typing furiously to the dispatcher, some type of message, whether, maybe we need to take a look at this. And yes, to answer your question regarding the runway configurations, et cetera, more than likely, they were landing what we call landing weight limited. So they had to burn a certain amount of fuel to make sure they were going to be okay to land below the maximum landing weight of the aircraft. So that requires a certain amount of fuel burn, which is another part of, okay, the brakes are set. And if the engines are spooled up a little bit, that means more than likely they had, usually it's about 1,000 pounds roughly. I'm only using rough numbers because every aircraft is different, but you can taxi out heavier than you're allowed to take off. Your numbers that will allow you to take off your maximum takeoff weight. So that's when you are required to have a taxi fuel burn. So as you're sitting out there, if the line's not as long as the company is anticipating, because it's always based on how much time your anticipated takeoff and what your taxi burn will be. If it's looking like, well, instead of it being number 15 for takeoff, you might be number 5. You might not burn enough fuel to be able to legally take off and be below your maximum takeoff weight. So there's several things going on there. It could be landing weight limited. It could be takeoff weight limited. Certainly, winds in runway performance would affect it. But I don't know that going into Charlotte, you're talking a 4 to 5 hour flight, roughly, give or take a little bit, depending on the winds. I don't know that landing in Charlotte would be as detrimental as much as the winds aloft and how fast your flight is going to cross the
I think
country.
he was going from Charlotte to San Francisco.
Okay,
yes.
So against Jetstream, yeah.
Against Jetstream again. So depending on what the anticipated fuel burn is, it could affect those numbers as well. So, but we have other ways of taking care of that. I mean, if you've ever noticed, landing weight limited, if you get it all the way across the country going to San Francisco, and you're going to be landing weight limited, well, you might put the flaps and slats down early, or might use the spoilers a little bit more, or put the landing gear down early, or worst case scenario, go out there and hold, do a couple of turns in the hold so that you can get below your landing weight limited. So that's really not as much of a factor as the taxi fuel and takeoff weight. The landing weight limit would be how many people you have on the aircraft and what you expected to land with. So yes, one person can make the difference. I can tell you though that if it's an online, with us, with Acme, if it's an online jump seater, an employee, a pilot of our company, they are included in that weight, and so they would not take the pilot out of the jump seat. So it may have been another airline carrier, a jump seater, or I don't know what their policy is there. So
I was going to say, how do they decide who to kick off the plane? They just kind of take a walk down the aisle and go,
the ugliest.
Yeah, well, usually the non-revs go first.
Yes.
The people that go on standby. And if in this case, more than likely, unfortunately, is probably a commuter pilot going to work, and another airline pilot trying to get to work or go home, and they'll probably be the first ones to be taken off.
Oh, I was going to say, I've actually been a passenger on a flight where we were takeoff weight limited out of Heathrow on an A330 with American Airlines also. I think it was a case of expecting longer taxi time, and then it was not so long of taxi time, and captain came on and just said, yeah, we're just going to sit here and burn fuel for about, I forget how long it was, but yeah.
I think that the jump seater told a really bad joke, and the captain goes, no way, man. You're out of here. I'm going back to the gate. I'm going to make up this story about a different runway and all that.
Past gas. That's the number one way to get removed from the jump seat. Past gas.
Who knows, really? But as the other thing, Dana, you're talking about, adding drag and whatever you can do to burn as much fuel so that you're within your legal maximum landing weight. Another thing to do is to descend way early.
Yes.
And so because at the lower altitudes, you're burning more fuel. That's another trick we have up our sleeves.
Yes, I forgot about that one.
Tricks of the trade.
Yes. Or you could just open the dump valves and just dump the fuel. No, I'm just kidding. We don't have those on our airplane. Maybe Nick did that, but he'd probably never.
The 330 couldn't dump. The 340
that's right.
could.
Okay.
Yeah. We used to head off down to Lagos tankering, and we would know exactly how much fuel we were going to consume on the way. Air traffic used to try and give us direct routings, and we go, no, thank you.
We'd like to take the scenic route today.
Exactly right. We'd like to go by the flight plan, and they get very confused because they go, "You don't want to go direct? What's the matter with you guys?
What's wrong with you?"
Because if we went direct, we knew we'd arrive with too much fuel, and we'd have to just go in the hold until we burnt down to landing fuel. So,
wow,
sure, funny.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Class Bravo Chris. Great questions. Hope that answered them for you. And finally, we have the last item in our feedback folder, and it's some audio feedback from another podcaster, host of the wonderful, Podcasting on a Plane podcast, Brandon Gonzalez, who not only is he an air traffic controller, but he's also a pilot, and he sent us this.
Hey there, APG crew and community. A belated yet heartfelt congratulations on 400 episodes. And more importantly, here's to 400 more. You know, at the end of episode 403, a guy named John left some feedback with the idea of having controllers ride along on sim training sessions. And it got me thinking. First off, Captain Jeff, you were looking for the term flight deck training. That's where controllers do jump seat rides on normal Revenue 121 flights. And we usually refer to it as FDT for short, or going flight decking. But you were right. The program was around a long time ago, and then it went away. And most importantly, though, it came back. And that's good because it's a wonderful program. And for some of my thoughts on it, you can actually check out my own episode number 27, where I share a little bit about the program and what my experience was like last year when I went out to Cleveland. And sorry, I'm not trying to plug, but it's kind of funny because that was actually the first time that RH from Opposing Bases and I did an episode together. Anyway, after the feedback, you all spoke a little bit about it, and Dana's comments about controllers training at the academy and then going out to the facility were interesting because it kind of made me realize that not a lot of pilots really think about what our training's like. It's not really like becoming a pilot at all, but I suppose there are some general similarities. Like, for example, the academy in Oklahoma City. It's a little bit like getting your initial certificates and ratings, and then you go to your facility to do specific on-the-job training, which is kind of like going through initial training at an airline, ultimately culminating in a type rating if you're a pilot or a facility rating if you're in air traffic. And then at that point, you're released to fly the line or to work live air traffic with just general supervision. So RH and I actually just recorded another collab a few days ago, and you're probably going to like it because it gets pretty deep into the weeds with what towers are working with, but this time him and I play pilot a little more than usual. And as far as flying both sides of the mic is concerned, you know, most controllers aren't pilots. And if they didn't come from the Air Force or something like that, they probably don't have an aviation background. No surprises there. But that's where the collab between ATC and industry really comes into play. The flight deck training program may be actually the only time that they get to witness cockpit operations ever. And I think that it's a really good time for pilots to talk to controllers too, and to give them the good stuff that they need to take back to their facilities about what it's like on their side of the cockpit door, right? But the idea of controllers sitting in actual pilot sim training is a pretty interesting concept. And I got to say, I think I like it. And I like that you all seemed favorable to the idea too. John had mentioned in the feedback some possible difficulties though, all of them true. And then Captain Dana added some good stuff to his points as well. And my critical brain also came up with a few more things that'll probably have to get worked out from our side, not least of which would be the logistics of actually getting controllers to airline and sim centers to do the ride-alongs. You know, often it's really hard to get a day or two off the schedule to go flight decking. And if an overnight was required, well, that might make for some added difficulty too. Also, having experienced plenty of it myself, I know how complicated and deep into the weeds sim training scenarios get. And I'm not sure if most controllers would truly understand what they're witnessing. Plus, those sessions are often hours and hours long, and they're pretty brutal. But that said, I'm sure that those few issues could be worked through easily enough and really clear the way for this type of thing to occur. And on the pro side, you know, it'd be excellent training. The stuff you can never see any other way could be demonstrated, as is, of course, the major point of the sim in the first place. And to reference the example in the feedback, it'd make it really clear when is and isn't a good time to talk to an air crew in distress. It's straight up more cockpit time for controllers, which is probably always good. And pragmatically speaking, there's never a weight and balance issue, a jump seat conflict, missed connection, or any other curveball that real line flying can often throw your way, right? And who knows, maybe some benevolent sim instructor might even let you get some stick time afterward to really round out the experience. Okay, that probably won't happen, but I can dream, can't I? I've had my fair share of sim torture, but I'd still jump at the opportunity to get in there again anytime, even if it's just to watch somebody else. But a fun last thought, you know, at my airport, which is absolutely full of professional track pilot training, we host facility tours regularly, and many aspiring pilots get to see and hear and experience controller training too, just like Dana mentioned. It really breaks down those invisible and frankly imaginary barriers, and it kind of shows that there aren't really teams in this whole thing, just different viewpoints. Anyway, if a sim ride-along program ever did come about, I'm not sure it'd be quite as popular as real flight deck training, but it'd be a great opportunity for sure. And if it did become a thing, well, no doubt I'd be the first to sign up for an Acme Mad Dog sim session any day.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon, for the feedback. And you would certainly be at the top of the list there to come on in and watch us flail in the simulator.
Do you know where Brandon lives?
Yeah, he lives in Southern California.
Oh, okay.
The more I think about it too, Brandon, I agree. I think it sounds like a really good idea. Just logistically, I think there's a lot of all the negatives that have been brought up, I think are minor in comparison to a lot of the positives. Yeah, I think it's a good chance to watch what happens in an emergency, even if it's simulated and probably goes a whole lot smoother than an actual emergency might. But hey, that's how training is anyway, right?
Yep.
Sure. I mean, it's just training. There's no, like we were talking about earlier with the Southwest aircraft. I mean, you can't train for everything, and you just have to take what you're given and make the decisions with it. And that's why we train, to be able to analyze and think about what we're doing and when we're doing it. So it would just be a very small cutout, but at least you'd get to experience what we're going through.
Yeah. And now Brandon, being a pilot, he knows kind of what's happening there. It's just, I think it would be most beneficial for the folks the air traffic controllers that are not pilots.
And I think having their air traffic control background, I don't think the things that will be happening in a simulator from a flying standpoint will be that difficult to understand and make sense of, even if it's fast paced and has a lot of technical stuff going on. You get the gist. Yeah.
Yeah. Or just the basic bottom line concept of, wow, there are a lot of things going on here. Mm-hmm. They're trying to communicate with the cabin. They're trying to communicate with the company. And here I am, asking him all these questions and not realizing that there's a lot more going on than I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, very good. Thank you, Brandon, for, and again, if you don't already subscribe to Brandon's Podcasting on a Plane podcast, please do. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's a top quality, top notch show. And with that, I think it's time for us to end our show, episode 404. Yes, a major, major error that you're listening to this or watching this. But hey, we didn't we didn't put a gun to your head to do this. So
thankfully.
Yeah. And we are coming up on the holidays here, but we're going to do our best to continue to put out a show every week. And I'm not sure when the next one's going to be, but you'll find out by following us on the social medias, and Steph is going to tell you about that.
Nice segue there, Captain Jeff.
Thank you. I lucked
You're looking
out
for that word the other week, I think. Yes, find us on these social medias. You can head over to twitter.com using the handle @APGcrew. Interact with all of us there together, or find our personal information handles tagged at the top of that page. You can also head over to facebook.com/airline pilot guy. Lots of good community interaction going on there. Information about news stories, gatherings, anything that you might want to know about in the world of aviation. So hope to see you there on the social medias.
Yes, and the other social media that we're on is Slack, managed by, created by, and controlled by Hillel. And so, hang on, let me turn my microphone volume down. Hillel, hello, it's time. It's time for the Slack thing.
Where's the soap?
I'll show you later. Okay, could you come over here and tell us about Slack, please?
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and Plain Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com, or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thank you very much, sir. You may go. Hillel, close the door. Close the door.
Oh yeah, Delta P.
Right. Thank you, Hillel. Sorry about that, folks. And also check out our website, airlinepilotguy.com, where you'll find information about the coffee fund and the Plain Tales. And let's see, I'm looking at the menu here. APG on YouTube, the APG library, where you can find good reads managed by our librarian Tiffany, and the APG store, and so much more. So please check it out at airlinepilotguy.com. And also a big thanks to our producer in Toronto, Liz. Thank you very much for all your help.
Yay.
We couldn't do it without you. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and what do I say?
Tailwinds.
Tailwinds.
Talons,
No,
I guess.
talons, Douglas.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Happy holidays.
I screwed that one.
Fix it in post.
Yeah, maybe.
What do I say? Actually, what do I say? Fix it in post.
Fix it in post.
Fix it in post.
Did we have some feedback from Marcus on the pronunciation?
Yeah, we did it on the last show.
Did we?
Yeah.
Oh, it came through during the week.
Yeah. We did it. Oh, wait a minute. No, you're talking about those things that you were sharing with us on on the chat.
Yeah, that was this week.
That was in feedback.
No, Liz didn't put it in feedback. We've had a little chat, but I just checked.
Okay,
you do it next time, perhaps.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that was. I thought that was just kind of just playing around kind of thing. I didn't know that was something.
Oh, I thought it just made a quiet, an amusing couplet.
It did, and let's do that, Liz. Let's put that in there, and then we can have.
She has already done it.
Oh, she has. Where is it?
No, she's in process. She's aware. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because I'm thinking, I thought I did everything that I saw in the current show folder. Didn't mean to screw anything up.
I am off to bed. Artwork for 404. Yeah, is that good?
Yeah, and if you can do something like
Aviation 404.
Error not found
on your part for watching.
I was
our
thinking
show.
of doing a glass cockpit with every screen going error 404.
Like that
Oh,
one.
that's a good one. I like it. Yes, perfect.
We likey.
Okay. Well, Nick, get out of here. Go to bed.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you stayed this long.
Yeah, I'm glad
Great
you made
to see
it
you, my friend.
to the
And then we'll talk about the possibility for show times next week later.
Okay. Brilliant.
All right.
Good night.
Bye, Nick.
And let's see. Anything else to cover before we end the broadcast for our fine folks in the chat room?
I think not.
I think not. I'm good.
Thank you, Rob. I won't call you DICK anymore. Apparently, that was offensive to some of our listeners out there, but I think he understands. Anyway, yeah. Thanks for doing that financial. That you really didn't need to do that, man. But thank you.
We appreciate it.
We do
very much.
Hamish, we love you.
We do. We love all of you out there that are listening live right now.
That's true.
Thank you, and for
Or
those
listening
of you
after the fact.
listening after the fact, thank you. It's always good for HR to kind of control what I'm saying or
It is a
correct
struggle. It is a
what I'm
struggle,
saying.
people.
It is.
The struggle is real.
Shut up.
Indeed.
All right. Well, guess what? It's time for us to end this thing and let you all get on with your weekends, and look forward to seeing you all next week on the next episode 405. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.